Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the Lights Out Podcast. Here we are. We are short Chris lineup, but I'm Miguel Iturrate. That's Mike Davis. And we're doing a deep dive. Means we got an MMA pioneer or rebel or whatever you want to call it, but Travis Wiuff is probably all of those things. We got Travis Wiuff, 50 Fight Club member, and he's got at least double that many fights at least. So, so we're gonna go deep. Mike, I'm gonna let you take it along, but Travis, let's say hello. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Awesome stuff.
So, Travis, here's the issues we got. One, you got 100 fights.
Okay.
And I'm mentally ill. So, I mean, that's a big problem. So
Okay.
I got through as many of your fights as I could find. And I think a month and a half ago, I said, hey, Trav, you want to jump on? You go, yeah. I'm like, okay. And then I started looking at your record. And I knew it was big, but there's fights on there that if you had 20, 30, even 40 fights, I would absolutely concentrate on that I am completely ignoring in this interview. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time.
No worries, man.
But you've got certain fights on your record that I think you've probably never been asked about yet.
Sure.
That when you look at them from a different point of view, that people were like, wait a minute, that's bonkers. And I think I unearthed a bunch of those.
Yeah.
So our goal, I mean, you're a pretty measured guy too. I've seen your interviews, you're a real measured guy. My goal is to make this a shoot interview.
All right.
At the end of this thing, or at some point in this, I get you all fired up. I'm not even going to lie about it. Normally, I don't tell people that. That is my goal with you.
All right.
All right.
Well, Travis, I heard actually, to get right from the very beginning, I heard that you come from a pro wrestling father or a family of, part of in the sports entertainment stuff. Is that where some of this comes from?
Oh, yeah. It was before I was born, but my dad did a little bit of pro wrestling on a regional level.
That's cool.
Did
it was all regional. It was all regional back then.
Yeah. County fairs, and he would travel around, and as I got a little bit older, he would tell stories, and I loved hearing those stories. I grew up a huge fan of pro wrestling, and so when he would tell stories about it, I was all ears.
So Travis, Miguel, if I tell you I got a big giant heavyweight, comes from a pro wrestling family, standout wrestler, bounced at a couple bars in his day, you would say to yourself, oh, that guy talks a lot of shit. For sure, you put that guy in a room, he's yelling at somebody, and there's something is being said. Travis, have you ever in your 100 fights? No, you never talk. You never.
No, I never have. I've always had respect for my opponents. I think that's where it started. I wrestled all throughout high school and in college, and I've gotten my butt kicked before. I know how it feels to get my butt kicked, and that humbles you. And I've never talked trash or anything like that. I've never looked at it as a fight. When I was competing, or still am, I've never looked at my opponent as I'm going out to hurt him. To me, it was always just a competition, and I enjoy competition, and that's one of the main reasons I've never had to talk trash. I never really felt it was necessary.
Now, being a big body, with your build and things of that nature and your skill set, have you ever thought about going down the pro wrestling route?
I thought about it initially. I wrestled in college. When I was done wrestling in college, I was looking for something to do. I'd known a few pro wrestlers from Minnesota, and I just didn't feel like I had the personality to do it. like I said, I love pro wrestling. I watched it as a huge fan. I just didn't think I had the personality.
Okay. Miguel.
Were you always kind of quiet? Like,
yeah, there you go.
A strong silence. Now, as a bouncer, though, there had to be a couple of times where you had to put an ass whooping on somebody. Like, that's not competition. Do you have some experience like that, or is it pure competition for you?
It's always been competition. I mean, when I was bouncing at bars, but I never looked like to hurt nobody, you know, like I'm 6'2", and, you know, I ended up having a lot of tattoos, and you don't have to say a lot when you look like that. And, you know, it was intimidating for other people. I've never really been a loud talker or anything like that. I've never had to.
So, Miguel, your standard question, I'm stealing it. I'm apologizing ahead of time. Did you get into a lot of street fights as a kid?
Never. I've never punched anybody in my life till my first MMA fight. So
this leads us into our first question. So the first time you ever punched somebody, was it September 7, 2001 in the Ultimate Wrestling 1 against Jeff Greer?
No. We did probably 10 to 20, I guess you'd call them amateur fights prior to that.
Okay. None of that's on your record.
No,
okay.
No, this was like, I mean, it was below amateur, you know, I mean, it was.
Well, was it in Minnesota? Talk about the scene, because up there, you know, even back then you had, like, up in the Dakotas, you had, like, Captain Nelson up there. Like, there were shows you could fight. Iowa. Talk about those early days.
So I just got done wrestling. I went to college for 4 years. I wrestled all 4 years. I did well wrestling. I was about a year away from my degree. I was going to be a cop for law enforcement. And I moved back home after my senior year with all intentions to, I was about an hour away from my school, with all intentions is to go back, get my degree, and become a cop. And I went to a bar to get a bouncing job, to get a job just for the summer. And there was a big dude there. He was, you know, clearly an amateur wrestler himself. And him and I started talking. And he's like, "Hey, I'm doing these." I don't even think it was MMA back then. He might have called it NHB. No holds barred. And he's like, "Hey, I'm doing these shows here monthly. You should do it." You know, and we were talking wrestling, and I'm like, I'd never gotten to a fight in my life. I just walked in to get an application for a job, and he's like, "No, you should do it." So he gave me his card, and on the name on the card was Brad Kohler. So that's how I met Brad. Yes. Yeah. And
all right, trying to hold my excitement. I apologize.
He gave me his card, and I literally threw it away. I had no intentions of doing it. And I talked to a couple people, and they're like, "Yeah, you should do it," because it was my hometown, and you know, people knew about it. And I called him a couple days later, and he had a school, like an MMA school. He was running a school up in like Minneapolis, and he's like, "Hey, come up for a training session with me, and we'll see how it goes." So I drove up there. Literally knew nothing. I'd never watched I maybe watched UFC like 1 or 2, but. And he's like, "You're ready." Like, I hit pads for like 5 weeks. He's like, "You're ready. I can get you a fight next week." I'm like, "No, I'm not." He's like, I need to train for this. He's like, "No, you're fine." So literally like a week later, I had my first fight. Small bar in Owatonna, Minnesota. There was probably 20 people in the crowd, and 15 of them were my family.
That's bizarre. That's bizarre.
Yeah, well, there was no athletic commission back then.
No. What's bizarre is that there were so few people there.
Yeah, I mean, it was just. That
was the time when MMA was so hot. All you had to do was put up a couple posters, and people would show up.
I mean, this was even before then, really. I mean, this was like 2000. I mean, maybe 2001. I mean, people just didn't know. And so I won that fight. Basically just took him down and punched him a couple times and had no clue what I was doing. And Kohler's like, "Let's do this again." And it was basically like we were a traveling circus. You know, we would, like I said, there's no athletic commission. So we would just travel from town to town, and Kohler could sell anything to anybody. and he'd talk to the bar owner and say, hey, you know, I got this ring, blah, blah, blah. And there's about 4 or 5 of other guys. And he'd set up a ring and we go fight. And he'd bring in opponents for me to fight. And I remember he'd always, I would win. The guys I was just athletic and big and strong. And Kohler would get on the mic after I won and he'd be like, hey, anybody in the crowd want to fight this guy? I'll give him $1,000 if they beat him. And I'd jump, bikers would jump in the ring and I'd fight a couple of those guys. And
would they still be in like their leather vest and jeans at this point?
Big old belt buckles.
That's fantastic.
Big old cowboy boots.
This is why I love Brad Kohler.
Yeah.
This is why Brad Kohler's the best.
We'd pack up and we'd head to the next town, and it was like a traveling circus. We did that for probably a year or so.
How much would you get? How much would this traveling circus pay you?
Mm-hmm.
He'd maybe give me $100, you know, sometimes, but I didn't really expect anything. I was a young kid. I was just out of college. You know, he'd pay for my hotel. He'd buy me. You know, one thing I'll say about Brad Kohler is I know he screwed over a lot of people, but he always treated me really good. And
shit, you were his moneymaker.
I know. Well, he took care of me. He really did. And you know, I'd come up, he'd give me hotels for the week or the weekend. He would give me food. You know, he'd take me out to restaurants and you know, a lot of bad things or whatever said about Brad, but there's not a lot of bad things I can say about him. I mean, I knew what he was. You know, everybody did. Everybody knew he was full of it. Everybody knew it. You know, when he said things were on pay-per-view, we knew they weren't on pay-per-view. We didn't care, you know.
Did you get a piece of that pay-per-view percentage at any point?
Yeah, anything times 0 is 0. So that's exactly right.
That's a good day. Hey, but let me ask you. So now you're doing this traveling circus with Kohler. Now, Kohler has been around. I mean, I know from the early, you know, mid-90s, early hook and shoot shows you fought in there, fought Travis Fulton and stuff.
Yep. I
mean, he had to see you and be like, you know, all right, when was the first time he offered you a fight outside of Minnesota? Because he had to be like, we got to take this guy out. I can make more money off of you.
So we did that for about a year. And like I said, he'd give me a couple $100 or $100 and sometimes nothing at all. Like I said, I didn't really care at the point. But then I got a hold of Victory J in Omaha, Nebraska. And I called him. I don't know how I got his number, but I called him. And he's like, yeah, I can get you on a card, and I can give you $500. I was like, $500? Like that was like huge to me. I didn't realize guys were getting that much money to fight. So once Kohler found out about that, he wasn't too happy with me because, you know, like you said, I was kind of his money man. But I mean, I think I went down there and that was like one of my first fights outside of Minnesota.
So Victory J was your first sponsor. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. He gave you shorts and stuff like that.
Yep.
I mean, you gotta remember, I'm looking at your record. So there's obviously a lot missing. Like if you're telling me there's 20 fights before you had your first one, obviously I believe you. Mm-hmm. But the first one I saw that you were out of town was February 16th, 2002 in a heavyweight tournament, Extreme Challenge 46. Where the winner of that got to go to Hawaii. Yep. And this is one of those underrated tournaments. Like in terms of, you know, we always talk about like high-end indie events. A lot of them, you know, including Federico Lapenda when he was doing overseas. In my opinion, this one kind of lives up to that. You know, in your first fight, I think you fought Keith Jardine, actually. Mm-hmm. In that tournament. Why don't you walk us through the tournament? I've got the names. If you're having issues with the names, I'll fill them in. But yeah, I mean, it was an intense tournament.
Yeah. So that would have been pretty, I think, less than 5 probably pro fights in my career. First fight, Keith Jardine. And it was probably my biggest, or the first time I fought into like a big crowd. In those shows in Minnesota, those were, I mean, he was drawing maybe 100 people, 20.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there weren't big crowds. And then I think it was in Iowa. And it was a big show. It was a good crowd. I met. That's the first night I met Schnacky, Poppa Schnacky. He was the announcer that night.
No, he was not the announcer. Okay, all right. I sent you a message in regards to this. So I'm a big fan of Big Poppa Schnacky. Like, I love the guy, you know. And Big Poppa Schnacky was not the announcer. He was handling the ring card girls. So I think this is the earliest footage that exists of Big Poppa Schnacky, because he had not transitioned to that ring announcer role, at least not for Monty Cox at this time.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right.
So the other people in the tournament, you had Ben Rothwell, yep. Mike Radnov, who was surprisingly incredibly good. Yep. You had Kerry Schall, and you also Keith Jardine and Ron Faircloth. Yep. All of those guys minus Radnov have made it to the UFC, later on. Yep. So why don't you walk us, like, when did you get there? Did you guys even weigh in? I mean, it's a heavyweight tournament.
I don't remember weighing in. Kohler and I drove down the night before. I don't remember a weigh-in because I don't remember seeing any of those guys. I remember the first guy I saw was Jardine, and he was like 220. I know he was really light. But I don't ever remember having a weigh-in. I know Kohler and I drove down the night before because it's not too far from Minnesota. I remember, like, Kerry Schall was a big boy. Ben's always been big. Radnov was huge. Yeah, like you said, he was he was freaking huge guy.
Tough as nails. Like, underrated heavyweight that I'm surprised didn't get the call to the UFC at some point. You know, I'm shocked that, they weren't looking at him. If they were, it doesn't show on his record. Your first fight was against Keith Jardine. Why don't you walk us through there? And Greg Jackson is cornering him, which is crazy.
Yeah. First fight, Keith Jardine. First, I think it was a jab. First jab I threw, I knocked him out, and it just landed on the button. It's not like I've been practicing that. I mean, my training for that was basically wrestling. At that point, Kohler and I were not training stand-up or I knew nothing. I was just a big, strong wrestler and threw a lucky punch and it landed. And, I was big, had power behind it and knocked him out. I think it was 6 seconds.
Yeah, it was a 6-second knockout. Yes, it was. And your second fight is against Mike Radnov.
Yeah.
So now, was this the first time you had ever lost in mixed martial arts?
Yeah. And I remember because he was strong. I remember he's the first guy that I fought where, like, we got into the clinch and he was able to, like, put me into the cage and that's where my, like, inexperience really started to show. And I think he finished me, or he cut me with a knee, and they stopped it on a cut. But that was the first time where I felt like some adversity and first guy I wasn't able to take down.
Yeah. How did you feel at that point?
Afterwards?
Yes.
Like, I had to get away from Kohler and find a trainer. If I wanted to continue to do this, get away from Kohler and find a trainer and learn more.
Now, you were in Iowa, Militish hotbed. Obviously they kind of came into your career afterward. Is that when you started kind of cross-training with them, or did you find a different camp?
It was a little after that, because after that tournament, we went to SuperBrawl, and that's where I met, like, Tim Sylvia, Pat, and all the guys. It was very shortly after that where I started cross-training and started actually traveling down to Iowa and training with those guys.
Okay, so SuperBrawl, it's actually 24. It was a 2-day tournament.
Yeah.
Miguel, listen to these names, dude. You got Ben Rothwell, Kerry Schall, Travis View. So there's 3 guys in the UFC. Tim Sylvia, Mike Whitehead, Cabbage Correa, Ron Faircloth, Kevin Jordan, Jason Lambert. All of them made it to the UFC. So now he goes from what I described earlier, an Extreme Challenge, 46, as an underrated, incredible tournament that should be talked about, to SuperBrawl 24, which on American soil, arguably speaking, is probably the greatest heavyweight tournament ever to have taken place.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. It was loaded.
Yeah, you know, I mean, hats off to the SuperBrawl guys, because this is 2002, so Zuffa was already there, but just starting. You know, we didn't feel the power yet. And from the very beginning, SuperBrawl, I mean, that's where Bolander debuted. That's where Pete Williams debuted. You know, they were getting guys from Matt Hume's team in the very early SuperBrawls, you know, 1 and 2. So they always put up good shows. Did it feel good going out to Hawaii? Was it like, and now let me ask you a question. How much did Brad tell you were getting paid for this?
Well, you know, at that point, because he had always talked about Monty Cox to me, and Monty was like this magical person, because he'd always talk about Monty, and so at that point he had kind of handed me off to Monty almost, where Monty wasn't managing me yet, but Monty was definitely at the picture at this time. So I think that's another reason why Brad was so honest with me, is because he knew Monty was going to be involved, and Brad's the one that you know, again, Brad's the one that introduced me to Monty Cox. I would have never had the success I had without Monty. So I don't think I was probably lied to too much at that point, just because Monty Cox was around.
Did you hear that? At that point, that's the key word. So let's talk about SuperBrawl. So now I've already established, just based on the entrants that are involved. But Miguel, as we have talked about, like with some of Federico Lependa's shows, you're dealing with people that aren't really familiar, that are throwing the event, aren't really familiar with the tournament process. So when injuries happen, they don't know what to do because there was no alternatives. There was no alternates in it. So your initial fight was supposed to be against Mike Radnov in a rematch. And for some reason that bout got canceled. Was Mike at the event?
Yeah, he was, because I took my picture with him.
So why did he pull out?
I have no idea, but yeah, you're right that I was supposed, because it was a Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
And all those guys fought Friday night, and I got a bye to Saturday night.
So Mike Radnov takes a plane ticket out there and pulls out of the fight.
Yeah, he was definitely out there.
Oh my God, I'd cancel his hotel room. I'd make him figure out how to get home. Holy cow. All right, so your fight gets pushed, and then on day 2, I think you fight Cabbage. Am I correct?
Yep.
All right. I need you to walk us through that fight, and I'll explain afterward. So go ahead.
Well, he's coming off a 1-punch, 6-second knockout.
But that's in a tournament previous.
No, I understand that, and I do understand that. But so he's feeling good about his power. Now Cabbage is probably not going to make you feel that good. Why don't you take us through it? Go ahead, Mike.
So back then, I think it was 1 10-minute round, and then if there wasn't a winner, they went a 5-minute overtime. And I'd never beat up somebody so bad as I beat up Cabbage for 8.5 minutes. I pounded on him. Everything I had, I freaking. And my conditioning wasn't the greatest at the time, but I just remembered his face looked like a volleyball. I mean, I put so many welts on him, and it's probably the biggest slam I ever had. I put him into the corner, and I thought I was going to break the ring. I beat him up so bad, and I just gasped after about 8.5 minutes. I couldn't keep my hands up, and so we went the first 10 minutes, and there was no winner, so we went to an overtime period.
Why was there no winner? Did they rule it a draw?
They were the draw, and then the winner, the.
Okay.
But was it like it had to be a draw, or there were
no, there was decisions. All right, so Cabbage fights on the first day. He fought Kevin Jordan. The place would have been empty if Cabbage hadn't have fought that day.
Yeah,
this dude was a huge monster ticket seller. Like, there was probably over 3,000 people there only to see him.
Yeah.
So whenever you have issues at one of your events and there's video footages of it, and it's so ugly that you don't want people to see it. Travis, have you ever seen this fight before?
No.
Okay, there's a reason for that. Dude, I got UFC Fight Pass. I am psychotic on YouTube. I go to everywhere to try to find stuff. It didn't exist. So then I go to Fight Pass and I go, you know what, man? Let me look at that whole SuperBrawl, event, and it's hidden in there, except the first 4 minutes of the 5-minute first round, because you're right, they were 10-minute rounds, and they stopped it at 5 because Cabbage was getting the shit beat out of him so bad that they, like, I'm not going to say I think. I'm going to just kind of imagine because of what I believe that I saw. So this SuperBrawl footage is multiple cameras, multiple angles. You got like these announcers that are literally on point. Like this show for the time is way ahead of, it's way ahead of the curve, including the announcers. Like right then, even in the UFC, were like, hey, what's a guillotine? Jeff Osborne. They weren't even doing that stuff. It was, this is what's going on. They were super technical. Miguel, they had the last minute of the first round, and it's one camera angle from like way far away with only audio of the audience. And it's because the ring announcers or the commentating team were screaming at the referee to stop the round. And like they were giving instructions to people around it to screw over Travis View. I am certain of that.
Travis, how does that make you feel? Because, you're there, you're the home. This affects a lot of things. It affects money, how you negotiate fight and stuff. And
am I off?
You're a guy that you come to do your job and then you get this shit. Like how do you swallow that? Now, 20 years later,
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've been in enough situations like that where, going on to enemy term, enemy soil and fighting somebody in their hometown, it don't surprise me at all. And like Mike said, Cabbage was a huge star. They needed him to be in that tournament. It don't surprise me at all.
So let's further the conversation, Miguel. So now it's round 2, okay? Travis goes and gets the takedown. Still, I mean, you can sit here and go, okay, well, maybe the footage got screwed up. And come on, bro. I ain't buying that. There was
no.
Okay, I guess
SuperBrawl is famous for that, because if you remember, Vitor Belfort made his debut there against John Hess in like SuperBrawl or early one, and that video never appeared either. You had to see an audience view of it. So they hide things.
Miguel, you got instead of one person with the video camera, they had 2 people standing next to each other at every side. So you had 6 cameras on the ring plus the overhead one. So now round 2 comes. Still, obviously, the bogus, feed. This referee, every single time Travis gets a takedown, he gives him about 20 seconds, and he knows Travis is fading, and he stands him up. Like bogus. Like even when Travis is only trying to catch his breath, it's so fast. The referee is clearly tilting the table. Am I off on any of this, Travis?
No, right before you were talking about that clicked in my head. I remember that. Is I would get takedowns and they would give me like 20 seconds. And I remember Kohler was in my corner, and I remember looking at him because that was something new to me too. And he didn't have an answer for it. Yeah, while you were talking about that's definitely how it was.
Okay. Travis, how do you shake everybody's hand? Like as a nice, you're genuinely an incredibly decent human being, by the way how I saw you handle yourself after that fight.
Well, first of all, I was completely exhausted. I mean, that was the most tired I'd ever been. I was so tired. I remember I couldn't keep my hands up. Cabbage's power wasn't. I mean, he was hitting me with everything he had, and he couldn't knock me down. But I was just too stubborn to go down. I couldn't keep my hands up. And I was just exhausted. I mean, that's the most tired I had ever been in a fight. That's the fight that I still to this day look back at. That's the fight that taught me conditioning, how important conditioning is.
Okay, so how was the conversations with like TJ DeSantis and everybody backstage after this took place? We're going to call this the Honolulu Screw Job.
I mean, the thing that kind of got me over was they told me they obviously saw my talent and they told me I'd be in the UFC someday. I didn't know if they were BSing me or not at that point, but they told me I was good enough to fight in UFC. And at that time, I mean, that's what's the goal. You know, back then that was a huge deal. So.
Yeah, so they basically told you, hey, put up with it. We'll put in a good word for you, and we'll just leave it at that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, like I was 21 years old. Like I was in Hawaii. They gave me, I bet I got like $2,000. I didn't care, you know, like I didn't know anything about the sport. I didn't know, you know, Tim was in the tournament, Tim Sylvia. I didn't know who that was. And I didn't know anything about Monty Cox. I didn't know anything. Like I was just, you know, I'm from a small town and first time I ever flew in a plane and I didn't care about that stuff. Like
that was your first plane ride?
Yeah. I remember like how stupid I was though. I was with Kohler and like the morning of the fight on Saturday, like we met these two girls and so we hung out like on the beach all day. Like we went surfing, like Kohler and I went surfing with these two girls and I fell asleep on the beach and I got like a horrible sunburn. You know, like, and this was Saturday. I was fighting Saturday night. Like, I didn't care though. Like I didn't look at this as like a future career or anything like that. They gave me like $2,000. I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm in Hawaii. At that point, I didn't know anything, you know?
Sure.
But you how long were you in Hawaii for that tournament?
3 or 4 days.
Okay. And then you just fly right back. That's a long flight. Now.
But there's your hookup because you met Tim Sylvia. You got Monty's there. They told you, hey, you're a UFC caliber guy. They stroked you a little bit. At some point, like, what's the next phone call you got that was serious? Was it Monty? Monty followed up in a week, I bet.
Yeah. I mean, from that point on, I didn't really have too much contact with Kohler anymore. He had pretty much passed me on to Monty, and then that's when my career really started rolling.
Okay, so who did you start rolling with after, like you said, your career got serious?
I think the first real trainer I had was Dave Monet. He was in Minnesota.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, great teacher, unbelievable teacher.
Man, a few words, but phenomenal.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you could never understand him, and I don't know if he ever showered, but the guy was an unbelievable teacher. I mean, he was a great fighter, and he was an unbelievable teacher. So he was still in Minneapolis, and I was about an hour and a half from him, and I would drive up there quite a few times a week and train with Dave.
That's great.
How old school is Dave Monet? He used to fight with contact lenses, and in a couple of fights, they got blown out, and you could just see like loses, like he's fighting blind at some point. But he was blind without his contacts or out his glasses. We always used to make fun of him. He was so blind without those.
Yeah. So this brings up at this point, like I said, like the fight finder's off, obviously in regards to yourself, but you also encounter one of the most prolific fighters in mixed martial arts in terms of overall fights. You end up fighting Travis Fulton on the Iowa Challenge. It's technically your 11th pro fight, and Travis appears at that point to have broken 150 bouts. Mm-hmm. How does that fight come about? And were you aware of how much experience Travis had coming into this fight?
So I was definitely managed by Monty at this time, but Kohler was still with me because he cornered me for that fight. And I think it was just because Kohler knew Fulton. No, I still didn't know anything. I didn't know Travis had that many fights. I I mean, I'm sure I could have asked, but I didn't really care. You know, at that point, I was training with Dave, and my skills were coming along. You know, especially my submission skills. Still a good wrestler, but I still didn't know a lot. I didn't know a lot about the sport. Yeah, I didn't know Travis Fulton at all.
That's wild. So you beat Travis by decision, and about a little over a year later at the Iowa Challenge 11, Chad Bergmeyer's event, you win a split decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that's the Iowa Challenge. Obviously, both times you fought Travis Fulton. That's kind of Travis Fulton's home base.
Yeah.
How did that second fight go? Did you believe it was a split decision?
No. So it was in his hometown. I think it was in Waterloo.
Okay.
And Waterloo is a rough town. And I remember it wasn't the most exciting fight, but I clearly won. It was not a split decision. And I remember I was in the ring, and it was like they were just waiting forever to announce the winner. And Travis kept talking to me, and he's like, "Hey, you know, you can have the belt, you can have the purse, but this is my hometown. I can't. You got to let me win. You got to let him announce me the winner." And I'm like, "Travis, I'm not leaving this ring until I'm declared the winner. Like I'll stay here." And we literally went back and forth, and I think Chad came in the ring, or came in the cage. It was in a cage. He's like, "You know, I'll give you your fight purse, but we got to announce Travis Fulton the winner." I'm like, "No, I'm not leaving. Like, give me the belt, give me my money. I'm taking the win, and I'm going home." And it was literally about 10 minutes, and they finally did declare me the winner. They called it a split decision, but yeah, they didn't want to give me the win that night.
So, what was it like working with Chad Bergmeyer as a promoter?
You know, I don't really remember anything bad other than that. Like, I know, you know, Travis was his guy, and they were in Travis's town. They didn't want to give me that victory, but you know, I got paid.
Did you ever train with Travis Fulton?
I never trained with him.
Did you ever get another offer from him for a work fight or anything like that? Because you know, sometimes...
I fought Travis 3 times actually. The first 2 were the 2 we just talked about, and the third one was in like Virginia. Like I don't know how they got him, but it was in a pretty decent show. It was in.
It's not listed.
Yeah. Anyway, I finished him at that time. I cut him with an elbow, and I cut him pretty bad. And I remember he was full of blood. And he's like, I'm like, "Travis, stop this. Like we can't," because we were good friends at the time. And, you know, we were fighting on the same cards together. And I'm like, "Travis, stop this. Like, we got to stop fighting each other." So, yeah, I fought him 3 times.
Yeah, that looks like it was in November of 2007, a show called Smash in Virginia.
Yeah. Where was it, Rico? Where are you reading that at?
I found it. It's on Short Dog, actually.
Oh, dude, that's the one database I absolutely hate because it's so hard to work. Wow. You know, were you surprised at Travis's recent dealings with the law?
Blew me away. I couldn't believe it.
Me too.
It makes me very sad. Like I considered him a really good friend, probably my closest friend in the business. I mean, maybe other than Monty, just because I've known him so long and so well. He's cornered me a number of times. I've cornered him. I was just blown away. Like, unbelievable.
Has he called you collect it all?
No, I thought about contacting him, but I don't know what I'd say. It's something like if it's something else, anything else,
Yeah, there's certain things you just can't work past, you know?
Exactly. Like I just can't. Like if there's anything else, I would offer him the shirt off my back, but I just can't.
Yeah. Throw some money on his books, you know, do something for him. Yeah. Yeah, he just got brought up on a second charge, same of a different person.
So, but I mean, unfortunately, you know, but in the ring, you said he was like a friend, and you guys do have so many fights. You know, he has so many more. You know, but there's a lot of mutual experience there, and there is that little bit of like, did you guys, you know, were you held back a little? Did you guys were you did you what did you talk to Travis about in the fight game? What were those conversations like?
I mean, we could hang out before the fight, and we'd always hang out after the fight. And when we would fight each other, like we would talk to each other. I never looked at it in like fight. I never looked at him like I was trying to hurt him. You know, like I considered him my friend, and we shared hotel rooms together, and you know, all that stuff. But I've never looked at him like as an opponent. Like I've just.
Did he ever try to get you to drive around like all those little small shows with, you know, the groups of guys that he used to beat up on a weekly basis?
No, he was never involved in that. He had his own thing going in Iowa where he was getting from. He's probably doing the same thing down there. So. Yeah.
All right. So, you know, Travis, I think you might be blocking your microphone.
There you go.
Yeah, it's much better. So UFC 40 is your UFC debut. You know what I mean? It's the first time at a big show. And when you walk out, they mention it's your 24th fight. Online, it only shows 14, I might add, at this point. But they had mentioned you only had 8 months of mixed martial arts experience. Are you not counting your beginning fights at that time? Because this is November 22nd, 2002.
Yeah, I mean, mixed martial art, like actually training mixed martial arts. Like I was training with Dave. At that point, I'd gone down to Militich and was training with them. But yeah, like 8 months of actual like mixed martial arts training.
So you fought Vladimir Matyushenko, and you took the fight on 2 weeks' notice after Frank Mir pulled out.
Yeah. Yep.
How does this opportunity come about? Had you been in contact with UFC at this point, or was this the first time they made an offer to you?
It was Monty Cox. I remember when he gave me the call. It was in Vegas. It was Tito against Shamrock. I mean, at that point, that was the biggest UFC there was. You know, it was just starting to become on to be on TV. Like I remember like the best damn sports show period. Like interviewed Tito and Frank or Ken, and that was like a huge deal that you even saw clips of the UFC on TV. So yeah, being at the MGM Grand, it was a sold out crowd. I knew who Vladdy was. I knew who my opponent was because he was a unbelievable amateur wrestler.
Yeah.
So I knew who he was. I was clearly outmatched. I had no pride business being in the UFC that early, especially against Vladdy, and an eye opener again. But the crowd and the atmosphere and the first time being on pay-per-view. I mean that was a big deal.
Hey, what'd you get paid?
I think 5 and 5.
Okay.
That's not bad.
And I probably got a couple thousand from sponsors, or maybe 1,000 from sponsors. Yeah, I think I walked away like $6,000.
Did Victory J take care of you?
Gosh, did he? I think it was full contact fighter.
Was it full? I think it may have been. You were wearing Victory shirts.
No, you're right. It was Victory J. Yeah.
That's cool. Old sponsors sticking by you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Victory J, man, like his contributions to the regional mixed martial arts scene, like back in the day, unfortunately, will never get its just due. But I really respect him a lot, man. The guy did a lot for a lot of different people.
Absolutely.
You had mentioned that you started working out over at Militich at this time, but you still had Brad Kohler in your corner. Was that just as a thank you to him?
Exactly. He got me started. He got me involved in the sport. He introduced me to Monty. I mean, yeah, that was basically a thank you. Absolutely.
That's cool. That's really cool.
And like I said, like, you know, Kohler screwed over a lot of people, but I was one of the good. He treated me pretty well.
Were you at the event where Monty Cox, he's got a book coming out. He writes about Brad faking a heart attack and taking his own ambulance out of the venue so he wouldn't have to pay people?
Yeah, Monty and I have talked about that. I think I fought on the card. I'm pretty sure I got paid, and then that's when he faked the heart attack.
Because your purse was so much?
Yeah. Yeah, Monty and I have talked about that. We couldn't really narrow down the date, but that's kind of like folklore, you know, like a lot of people know about that. It's kind of crazy.
That's funny shit, man.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable.
Big Papa Schnake announced that show, and I remember him calling me up after that. He's like, I'm never, ever going back there. Yeah.
That sounds just like him.
Yeah. And were you at any of the shows where Brad would forget the scale and he would just like lift up the fighters and go, oh yeah, you guys are kind of the same weight? And like he was the actual scale for the event?
No, nothing like that. But I mean, he pulled so many crazy things that it was just unbelievable. But you know, there's no commission back then. There's no rules. It was like the Wild Wild West. We could do whatever we wanted. I mean, he could have did anything. You know, he was making pretty decent money probably.
Yeah. So Miguel, you mentioned this Wild Wild West and no commission in Minnesota. That's what you refer to as a segue, because on April 18th, 2003, International Cage Combat 2, where you were supposed to fight Harry Moskowitz at the Target Center of 20,000 seat venue, was canceled. Yes. Now, I know a little bit about this. I'm a Midwest guy. Could you walk us through your experience of not fighting for them?
Oh man, that was a huge card. That was a huge deal. Obviously at the Target Center. I want to say Jeremy Horn was the main event. Yeah, the Milicic guys were there. It was going to be a big show, and I was pumped up. I'm pretty sure I sold tickets, and that's how I got paid. And yeah, and Moskowitz was a UFC veteran, so that always looks good. Yeah, and then it didn't happen.
Why did they say it got canceled?
I can't remember.
Okay, so what I recall is that there's, and I might be blurring some of my facts because, you know, I mean, we're going back 20 years.
Yeah.
So there was like some sort of farmers union or collective that needed to, like, I don't know, they wanted to use it as an advertising tool. And I think what they did was they teamed up with Brock Lessnar, if I recall correctly, in order to pull this event off. And they get to Target Center, they load it up. Monty's the matchmaker, I believe, at this point. And they wait all the way to the last minute, and they see that there's like, I don't know, maybe not as much money coming back in, or maybe they didn't like have the actual money, that they were just kind of throwing their name around to kind of, you know, do like a money grab. And they canceled the event last minute. And I remember how furious everybody was. Did you turn your ticket money in, or did you still have your ticket money when that event was canceled?
No, I turned my ticket money in. I can't remember. Yeah, because Monty did the matchmaking, but there was a different guy that was the promoter. And I don't remember getting paid or anything, or getting money back or anything.
All right, so you didn't turn your ticket money in. Because some people did, and they never got it back.
Yeah.
No, that's what happened to you, right? I'm sorry if I'm unclear. You took your ticket money, you handed it in, and then they never got paid.
Yeah, I never got paid.
But did you get your ticket money back?
No.
Oh my God.
No.
Man, Miguel, it's either hoodwinked or bamboozled. One of the two, maybe both.
Well, I mean, you know, it's the Wild Wild West, right? That's
so essentially they cancel this event the day of. Am I correct?
Yeah, day of, I think. Saturday, yeah.
Was there weigh-ins the day before, rule meeting, the whole like normal stuff?
Yeah. But by that point, there was at least weigh-ins in a rule meeting. I remember meeting Moskowitz. Yeah, but
Yep, that's it. Hey,
that's
nice
what you do. What do you do?
All right, now, Travis, at this point, you're a pretty big ticket seller. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Miguel, I've seen Travis fight like maybe 4 times in Minnesota, and he had this T-shirt of like himself coming out of a diesel truck that 90% of the audience was wearing. Like it was just like, I'm hustling T-shirts, and I'm like, I don't, these people aren't gonna have any money. Like they bought Travis View T-shirts. Like I remember my wife at the time, God rest her soul, going, holy shit, who is this guy? You know, he sells a lot of tickets. But how much money do you think in tickets you sold for that event?
Well, I remember when I'd fight in Minnesota, it was very easy for me to sell 100 tickets. A ticket was what, $25? So,
Your dad used to hustle tickets for you.
Oh,
big
yeah.
time.
Big time, yeah. Yeah, he loved to come to the fight. Yeah.
Wow. So you think they got you for 25 times 100, huh?
I mean, I'd always sell at least 100, and that's, you know, the cheap tickets, you know, the tables were talking more, so.
Miguel, how were those phone calls afterward telling people that the event is canceled and I don't have your money?
Now you smile, but I mean that's gotta be a low point, no? Am I wrong?
Oh yeah, I mean,
talk about, did you consider saying fuck this job? You know, like how does that make you feel? Because
yeah, I mean, if you look at your reputation, Travis, like no one says anything bad about you.
Like most people are going to understand, right? People are going to understand, but there's that few people that are going to hold it against you and stuff like that. It's a horrible spot to be in.
Yeah, I mean, and guys, it's happened quite a few times. Like,
oh, we're getting there, Travis. I think I figured them out. We're getting there.
It's happened in Minnesota. I mean, that's honestly why I think Minnesota doesn't do shows anymore, because it's happened so many times that, yeah, one, it's embarrassing, you know, and two, it's a pain in the butt. But it's happened a lot.
If you look at like the other promoters that are actually good regional promoters, that hurts them probably more than somebody that just stole the money and is never returning again. Yep. Because now they have to explain to people, no, the event's actually happening. I don't do those types of things.
Exactly.
Like it puts them in a horrible spot, man.
Yep. Yeah, because I remember, man, this is quite a few years now, probably 5, more than that. Somebody was going to try to do a show in Minnesota because we haven't had a show here forever. And that's exactly what this promoter ended up not doing the show, is because ticket sales were so low because nobody believed that the show was actually going to happen. I mean, it killed mixed martial arts in Minnesota.
Wow.
Nobody does shows here. Nobody does shows here anymore.
Now, is there Indian territory?
Well,
there is one guy way up.
Jeremy Bjornberg.
Yeah, he just started. I think he's obviously 2020. He didn't do anything, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, Jeremy Bjornberg's in Minnesota. He does at the Mystic Casino. Yeah. He's a super, super solid dude, man. Like incredibly knowledgeable in regards to sport. Manages a lot of the Duke Rufus guys. Works with the LFA. Like he's legit, dude. Super legit. So Travis, one more time, you're kind of covering your microphone. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Nah, it's okay. We're trying to catch every word out of you. So
now I got one question about the Minnesota scene while we're still here. Now in Minnesota, you talked about you had Manet, you have Kohler, who is what he is, but he was a pro, and
he didn't help. Kohler didn't help that scene at all.
No, he did not.
But there were also guys like Greg Nelson and eventually like Brock Lessnar. Like, what? Yep. Did you ever train with Brock? Like, I mean, he would be like a perfect, training partner for a huge guy like that. Like, what was that scene like there before we let Mike take it away?
So then, this is a little bit later on, but I started training with Greg Nelson at the academy, the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, and I met Brock. We had known each other through amateur wrestling. just very briefly. And then I helped him train for about, I think it was 6 months to a year, probably. I think it was 2 of his title fights, something like that.
Wow. How was he as a training partner?
Awesome. One of the nicest guys I'd ever been around.
So did you work out with him at Greg Nelson's, or when he opened up his private training facility on his own compound?
Both.
What was the training facility like? And Mike Russo worked out there with you as well, am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that training facility like?
He had a really nice weight room. You had to walk through that. I mean, it was like everything you'd ever want right there. And then it was like basically a wrestling room. It was basically in a big barn. Great guy. I mean, took care of me, took care of the fighters.
Who else was in that room with you?
Cole Conrad.
Stud.
Marty Morgan was the coach. There was a couple other guys, but
was Mark Kerr up there at this time?
No, he wasn't there.
Did you get there after Mark?
Yeah, I came after Mark. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, was it a straight wrestling room? Is that the kind of Brock like to stick to his guns, or did he have someone like Nelson there? Because Nelson's a technique guy, you know what I mean? Was there?
No. It was pretty much live goes. I don't remember doing a lot of technique work, but it was live sparring. I mean, we were going hard. I know I'd heard rumors like Brock didn't want nobody like hitting him. That's not true at all. Like, he was fully committed, and we had live sparring. Cole Conrad was the man of the room. I mean,
he's a stud.
Obviously, he was an incredible wrestler, but he had good stand up, and I mean he was the man in the room.
Okay.
Now, I mean, the rumor was that I'm from Chicago. Minnesota is quite a bit a ways from here, but the rumor was that he didn't like to lose, even in practice. So even if you were to kind of get one up on him with the intent of showing him some technique, he would shut the entire conversation down and be pretty angry. Is that?
No, I've never seen anything like that. And now that you say that, his BJJ guy was from Chicago.
Caprito,
yeah. He was in the room too. But I never seen anything like that from Brock. Like, Marty was the coach, and I don't know how well you know Marty, but he was a huge stud here in Minnesota. Great wrestling coach, great guy. And I mean, Brock I never seen anything like that. He was willing to learn, and obviously Caprito was great on the ground, and
I think he gets a raw deal, man. Like if you look at, he had an illness that they said takes about 16 months to 2 years to kind of get through.
Mm-hmm.
And they explained is the one thing that you're going to lose is muscle mass and cardio. And I think he just came back too early. But like, look at the guys he fought with Frank Mir. And if you think like he doesn't have cardio, Shane Carwin's another example. But if you want to look at somebody that does that when he has cardio, look at his fight against Heath Herring.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy absolutely went 15 hard minutes against Heath Herring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was a stud. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, obviously everybody knows, but I would dare to say he was underrated. I
absolutely agree with you. I 100% agree with that statement.
Yeah.
All right. So Miguel, this takes us to our international portion of the interview. And one of my favorite international events is Octagno Extremo in Monterrey, Mexico.
Oh boy.
How was your dealings with them?
So I was living in Rochester, Minnesota at the time.
Here it comes. Go ahead.
And I'm going to fly out Thursday, weigh in Friday, fight Saturday.
Okay.
Go to the airport in Rochester, Minnesota at the time. And they tell the airport, the they tell me that they booked my flight out of Rochester, New York. Okay.
That's great. Hey,
Okay.
wait. Not yet. When did you get the ticket?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Was it probably like the morning of?
Oh, yeah. It was nothing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go ahead. Okay.
So
making sure we had the same experience. So go ahead.
Yeah. So they said the only flight to Monterrey, Mexico is the next day, Friday. Or no. The only is Saturday, the day of the fight. So this may have been a fight. I don't remember Monty and be involved. I think I contacted them and said that the only fight I can get down there is the morning or the day of the show. Obviously, they didn't care. They just wanted me down there. So I flew down to Monterrey, Mexico.
Did you pay or did they pay for that ticket?
No, they paid for it.
Okay.
Wouldn't pay for a corner, though.
Okay, wait. Did they also give you a return flight at that time, or did they give you the return flight once you got there?
No, they gave me the return flight because
that's nice to have.
It's, certainly, I don't think that's asking for too much.
They probably wouldn't have had it, but since they had to rebook me, they probably had to fly me home. So I fly down to Monterrey, Mexico, get there late in the afternoon, go from the airport directly to the arena. We didn't even go to the hotel. And it was in like a bull arena where they have like rodeos.
So were you dealing with Master Victor Davila at this point?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Okay.
Yeah. So walk into this bull arena, and this is where I meet Justin Eilers. He's fighting on the card. So we're warming up in the back, and it's basically dirt in the back. We're warming up next to like bulls and it is probably 2,000 people, and maybe 1,000, but it was a decent crowd, I guess. I fight. I can't remember who I fight, but I'll
tell you who. You fought Mark Tullius.
Mark Tully. Yeah. Definitely not my most exciting fight. Basically laid on him for 3 rounds. And after the fight, we're waiting for the announcer to announce the winner. And the crowd, go ahead.
Did they say there's an overtime round?
No, but they wanted to.
Okay.
So the crowd starts chanting "Uno más," like they want one more round, and they just start crying "Uno más, uno más, uno más." I thought they were saying "You're an ass" because it wasn't the most exciting fight. So I started, and by this time bottles and stuff are come flying into the cage, and I'm thinking
I had that same experience.
I'm thinking they're calling me an ass. So I start throwing the bottles back at them and then giving everybody the middle finger. And I don't even think they announced me the winner. I remember Justin had fought before me.
So you were the main event.
We were the main event. And
thank God.
Justin's like, we got to get the hell out of here. And it was almost a riot in this bull arena in the middle of Monterrey, Mexico. And we barely got to the back. We got our stuff. I don't remember getting paid because we got into a cab and we went directly back to the airport. We didn't even go to the hotel, and we stayed the night in the airport because we thought 2,000 Mexicans were gonna take us alive. So it turned out to be quite the experience.
That's a video I'd like to see. To be honest with you, like you Breaking Bad, like I didn't think you had that in you. Like it's. People chanting bad names at you. I mean, maybe that's what you need,
And the crazy thing was all they wanted was one more round, and I was hearing something else, and yeah, it was a full-fledged riot in the middle of Monterrey, Mexico.
So, did you have any interaction with the promoters at all, Master Vic?
I don't think so. Like, I know he didn't pick me up at the airport. He may have talked to me a little bit at the arena, but I remember.
Did you take a taxi or did somebody pick you up?
No, we took a taxi.
They didn't even have a ride for you?
No. As soon as we got out of that ring, we got our stuff. And I remember changing at the airport, and I still had all my fight stuff on. All we wanted to do was get out of there.
Did they ever contact you afterward?
No. I don't think they wanted me back. I didn't want to go back. Like I learned a lesson that night.
Do you remember what they had offered you pay-wise?
No.
Okay, so I went out there with Wes Sims.
Okay.
And I speak fluent Spanish. And it's like, you don't think that, like, looking at me, but it's Mexican Spanish too. So they had Wes do like a press tour, and I would like, you know, Sims has got like the sense of humor of like about an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So him and I are really good friends. That's essentially that's what that means. So they would ask Wes a question, and his response was, well, I'm here to not only fight, but give back to the community. I see all of these children in the street. I plan on giving my entire purse away after I get out of this like whorehouse, and gave the name of the whorehouse. Whatever is left after I get out of there is going to the kids. I promise everybody. And like he would say these absolutely just like nice, meaningful things, and then he would take like a sharp left turn. And the taxi driver, one of the taxi drivers on the way to the event was, because they were quoting Wes in the newspaper, he wanted to show us what was said in the newspaper. He thought it was the greatest thing. And we're like, yeah, he's the one that said it. The guy literally drove like from about 10 different taxi stands showing off Wes like he's got the guy that was saying all this crazy stuff in the newspaper. So the interesting caveat to that story is, Miguel, do you know who Victor Davila is?
As far as a Mexican promoter, yes, I've never met him. Okay.
So he's actually employed by the UFC.
Okay, is he their Spanish-speaking announcer nowadays?
And whenever they do events in Mexico, they use like his promoter's license. Yeah. So Octagno Extremo is an affiliate of the UFC. Wow. They might even be on Fight Pass.
That's crazy.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
From the background he came from, it's a little surprising.
Dude's a total border rat. Listen, I'm never going back there. Yeah. I lived in Mexico for 3 years. I know cartel scumbags whenever I see him. He's 100% in that category. Travis, you don't have to say it. I will. The dude's a border rat scumbag that takes advantage of people in Monterey. He's don't even get me started on that shitbag. He would fly us down and then get us return flights when we got down there to like various cities that we didn't come from. Like we were like Prince McLean that was on The Ultimate Fighter fought down there from Columbus, Ohio. He got on like a flight to Idaho or Utah. It took like 36 hours to get home by bus.
Wow, that's crazy.
Oh, dude's a total shitbag, man. Horrible, horrible promoter. One of my favorites. It's just on the international side.
Oh, always good for a story there. But I like that you had to get out of there and didn't even worry about, wait, where am I getting paid? No.
Not worth it.
No, we just wanted to get out of there. I remember Eilers probably saved my life that night.
All right, so one of the fights that I guarantee just the novice would look over in your record is one of the more fascinating ones for that of myself. And Miguel, I might add. You fought for Heat FC in Natal, Brazil.
Yep.
Luta Libre guy, Carlos Barreto. You won by decision. So I believe Yahir, was it Lorenko? He's a Nuevo Uno black belt. I believe he was the promoter. They only did 4 events, but they were all superstar events in terms of like the people were on it. How was your fight against Carlos, and what was your experience like before I kind of throw in why it interests us?
So at that point, Carlos was like a huge superstar in Brazil.
Stud.
Yeah, huge stud. I didn't know that at the time. Flew down there, didn't bring a corner. Met Forrest Griffin. he cornered me. So like most fighters, you go out to it was actually in a ring. We went to the ring. You go to the ring prior to the fight just to maybe warm up or whatever. So I remember we left our locker room and we were going to the ring, and they had guys in each corner, military guys with like M16 machine guns in the corner. And I'm like, oh my God, this isn't Minnesota no more. I ran back to my locker room as quick as I could, and I didn't go back out until it was fight time. That shook me pretty good. I'd never seen anything like that before. So the fight itself, I could take Carlos down at will, and I pound on him. I cut him above both of his eyes really bad. It was blood everywhere. We went 3 5-minute rounds, and I remember the ref said, do you want to go one more round? I'm like, and I remember telling the ref, like, I could do this all day if he wants to continue to fight. So I think we fought 5-5-minute rounds. After the 5th round, they stopped it, and they gave me the unanimous decision. But at the time, I didn't know Carlos was a stud. I just remember I could take him down whenever I wanted to, and he believed in that jiu-jitsu, kind of like I believed in wrestling, and it was a bloody mess.
So one of the interesting things about Carlos Barreto is he's got wins over Trey Telligman, Kevin Randleman, Ben Rothwell, and Brandon Hinkle. So the guy's a friggin' stud.
Yep.
How was your experience in Brazil?
I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. First time, traveling that far. Got always treated really well. Back then, I didn't have any kids, so I remember we stayed there for a good week. I think almost a week.
Good move.
Yeah, I remember Forrest didn't have any clothes with him. He wore the same clothes like the whole week. Yeah, he didn't bring any clothes with him.
Did they lose his luggage?
I don't think so. I don't think he brought any clothes.
Hey, you travel light sometimes. You never know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
maybe it was like Spirit Airlines. You just didn't want to pay the $30 for the luggage.
We can have our Brazilian friends confirm this, but Barreto, you're talking about Barreto as a legend. If I'm not mistaken, Barreto was the first person to wear a blue gi in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World Championship. Like now the blue gi is pretty common, but it was never seen before until him and his teammate in the lighter weight did it way back in the 95, like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a guy who's been around. That's a nice win too, going down to Brazil and beating him up there.
I'm a fan of Luta Libre. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of like, it's not really talked about much, but like we had Yohil de Oliveira on the other day, Carlo Prater. I got no skin in the game, but I love the Luta Libre guys, the real old school cats out of Brazil. All right, so this is where Miguel comes into play. March 13, 2004, MFC Euphoria, the first one. You fight Roman Zentsov. Miguel, what was your idea of making this bout, and was that your first choice for Travis?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that was a tournament. That was an 8-man tournament. It happened at the same time as a light weight tournament. So we were trying to fill 2 weight classes at once. We weren't able to complete any of those tournaments, obviously, but that's where it was. If you look at it, that tournament, as far as heavyweight is concerned, was pretty good for the time too.
I think the issue was that it was spread over so many days, like different events, and people were just kind of picking off matches that you guys, had next in line.
Well, I told a story that, Pride actively blocked my Eve Edwards Joaquin Hansen fight in that tournament in the lower weight class by invoking a clause in Joaquin's contract, and that put everything to shit. It made everything harder to keep the tournament going and everything like that. But Travis, an American guy, at that point still hadn't gotten a lot of love from like a bunch of promoters. He was still like a road warrior stuff. So, there was the chance there, or the hope that, if Travis could get through the tournament, we would put a belt on him. There were a couple of Justin Eilers was in that tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So, Travis, is that what you remember, or was this not a tournament?
Yeah, so the first time I fought for you, that was like I took it on short notice.
Okay.
And that was against Roman Zentsov. And then you brought me back, and that was the first one. Was that?
Gotcha.
The first one was part of the 8-man tournament. Yeah, the first time I fought Brazilian Joao.
Yeah, Antoine.
Yep.
So Zentsov at this time was the M1 heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
And you made a definitive statement in that bout. You finished him in the second round. Look, you don't even remember. That's crazy. Like, I look at your face.
Mm-hmm.
You finished him with elbows in the second round. And M1, legit organization. And there was very few, like, you had Pride, you had UFC, and all of that Eastern Bloc, coming out of M1, not a lot of pretty records coming out of M1.
Yeah, yep.
But the dudes, they got put through the meat grinder, man. They're just tough as nails.
Yeah.
And Zentsov certainly stood out, amongst the Eastern European elite.
Yeah, I remember all those Russians guys were so tough. But again, they didn't have the wrestling background. I could take them down pretty easily. They hit like freaking tanks, but they just, at that point they hadn't developed their wrestling yet. And Roman was a tough guy, but I remember I could get on top pretty easily, and I finished with him with elbows.
Yeah, you smashed him, man.
Yeah,
you smashed him big time. And you also fight in Jungle Fight. You fought Leopoldo Montenegro. I think those fights were about 12 days apart.
Yeah.
And how was it dealing with Waleed Ismail?
He's a character, man. He what you see and what you hear is what you get. He's a character. I liked him though. We never had an issue or anything, but he was definitely extreme and intense, and good guy though. He walks it. He walks the walk and he talks the talk. So.
And you got paid though, so he paid you.
Absolutely,
no problems. Okay, that's cool.
Oh shit! You know what, man? Leopoldo Montenegro was the guy that fought Dave Schultz in a fixed fight.
Yeah,
you were the first fight after it. Holy shit! I got that confused. I got my notes. Yeah. I usually don't screw up like that. So, did you find that a little interesting, that bout? In regards to, did you feel like you were getting offered a fake fight walking in there?
No, because I knew Leopoldo was Waleed's boy, but there was never any talk of a fix, or there's never anything like that. I think they assumed that he could beat me, and he threw a triangle on me, and I slammed him, a big slam, and I knocked him out. And but yeah, there was never no fix there. I'm pretty sure that Waleed was pretty confident in
him.
Okay.
And was Frederico Lapenda still with Jungle Fight at this time, or had he already exited?
Yeah, I don't remember that name.
Okay. Yeah, he probably had already exited. Wow. Okay. And then you go back to October 15, 2004. Oh, wait. Yeah, October 15, 2004. Magomedov, Ibrahim for Miguel again in Euphoria. So this is a part of that tournament.
This was in the second round. We loved fighting for Miguel. It was like a huge, because the Miletich guys were involved. And it was like a big family get together, Miguel treated us great. I still remember going down to because it was at the Trump Casino, and we would Miguel, you would always get us free passes to the cafeteria downstairs for like the workers, and we could go in there and eat, and it was just fun. It was like a family get together because all the Miletich guys were there, and Monty was there, and it was a great time.
Well,
so was that your biggest payday?
Well, really fast, when you fought Zentsov the first time, that feel-good card that we've talked about, Mike, with other people. Like Ebersol was on that card.
Yeah.
Wisniewski was on that card. Clemente was on this card. Trevor Prangley. So, like, it was – and what happened is the Russians showed up all Red Devil, all in black outfits with the red lettering, all, making mean faces and stuff. And the American team just started to click and say, hey, you know what? And hey, they almost swept the night. So yeah, that feeling carried over. It was always us, and the promoter was Russian, so it was always like us versus them.
Yep.
Yeah. No. I attended a few of those. So and then Megamedov, you had Jeremy Horn and Tim Sylvia, as well as Pat Miletich cornering you. After that final bell rang, he hammered you with an illegal elbow.
Yeah, I remember that. Tough dude. I remember getting ready for that fight. I think I was training at Pat's, and tough guy. He had some sambo background. I landed a couple of shots though, standing, and that's what opened up my takedowns for me. But I definitely don't think I was probably the favorite in that fight going into it. But yeah, I do remember that cheap shot at the end.
So Miguel, Travis receives a cheap shot, like a heavy elbow, meant to hurt him after the final bell. What do you think Travis does after that?
I don't think we have a repeat of when he was starting to throw beer cans back at the crowd.
I think he shook the guy's hand, went over to his corner, shook their hand, no issues whatsoever.
Well, I think you know what? Fedor was in his corner, so what was I gonna do? It was Fedor Emelianenko because he was at the shows, right, Miguel?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Fedor was in his corner, and I remember at that point I knew mixed martial arts, and I knew who Fedor was, and I'm still like a little.
No, go ahead.
I'm still like a little kid when it comes to stuff like that. Like, there's freaking Fedor Emelianenko.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so I couldn't wait to get over there and shake his hand.
Yeah, Fedor is, greatest of all time. Can we all agree on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So, Miguel, I'm like a huge fan of what you guys are doing at the time. Bodog was phenomenal. Euphoria, it was like a gift they kept giving because I was at so many of the events. I got to see him live. So you guys had mentioned Antoine Joaude, February 26, 2005. Joaude was a 2004 Olympic wrestler. Huas Valley Tudo, another Luta Libre guy. And at this point, you switched camps to Dave Manet.
Yeah.
What was it, just the distance thing between Miletich?
I was still living in Minnesota, and I would travel down to Miletich's like Monday through Wednesday night or Thursday. I'd work out, then I'd drive back home, and I did that for a while. Tim Sylvia would always let me stay with him, but it just got to the point where it was just too much. And Dave was a great trainer, so.
Yeah, Antoine Jaoud too. He was interesting in that you're talking about a guy that spoke 5 languages pretty well,
wow,
very well. He was Brazilian of Lebanese descent, so he spoke Arabic, and where he made his name in the beginning in mixed martial arts was he went to the original Abu Dhabis, and if you remember in the original Abu Dhabis they had an Arab division, and he swept the Arab division every year they had it, and then entered the real tournament. But he was probably the only really legitimate guy because he'd been trained in Brazil. Everybody else was kind of, one-dimensional and stuff. But he was definitely a guy who was around, very impressive dude, and a great win.
Yeah.
What's kind of crazy, looking through a bunch of your fights, you have received more groin shots than like almost any. I don't think a fighter that we're ever going to interview is. You got 2 groin shots that night, and you've got several others in the future. Is that like is it odd to you that is so reoccurring in your bouts?
Yeah, I don't know if it's heavyweights or I really have no clue, but yeah, probably not something I want to be connected to, but
yeah, right.
Now let me ask you, did you ever get hit low and in a fight and said, all right, fucker, I'm gonna give it back to you when you get cleaned up? Like, is that not your style? It's not your style, is it?
Nope.
No, I don't know. Maybe I'm naive, but I never thought it was intentional. You know,
You had one fight where you took 4 low blows.
4 in the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. If my corners were halfway decent, they would have freaking got me the win. I ended up losing in the 3rd round on that fight.
Yeah, it was like Attila Vey actually got you 4 times in 1 round. Yeah.
Not Attila Vey. It was
I got it in my notes.
Oh gosh, he was Russian. I fought him in Sengoku. Gosh,
I got it. Oh, here it is. It's Stan Nedkov. You're right. I got it right here.
Yeah, Nedkov.
Multiple kicks to the groin. 3rd round, Travis was laid out. Yeah, looking like he was going to throw up. That's in my notes. Yes. Yes.
That's
4
crazy.
in the first round. 4 in the first 5 minutes.
And all that says in the on Short Dog is TKO punches. That's all, you know, it says for all that.
Yeah. Okay, so in Sengoku, like Boss Rutan, who's doing the play-by-play is going, yeah, I don't think Travis should get up at this point. I think he had enough. He just needs to get out of here. This is over.
Yeah.
No fault of Travis. Why did you continue on?
I don't know. I'm not very smart. I ended up, I have no idea. I guess it's just in me to continue to fight, but.
And you know what's crazy? Like, did they give you your win bonus for that? Did they find the other guy?
No, I'm sure they didn't find him, but I was paid a flat rate, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. What was it like rolling with Jeremy Horn, and what was the room of Miletich Fighting Systems? What was it like back in the day?
So I really didn't work out with Jeremy down in Miletich. When he left, he went to Utah, and I moved out to Utah for about a year and just trained just with him. That's the only reason I moved out there. And phenomenal fighter, but I think even a better coach. Made everything so much easier, you know, everything made sense when he would explain it. Just a great person, but a great coach, and you know, his resume kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, super impressive, really impressive. Like even as an individual too, he's just you know, real nice guy.
Yep.
His word is gold. Like, yeah, no, I respect Jeremy a lot. You rattle off 19 wins in a row. Like it's you Minnesota guys. We had Nick Thompson on last week, and like he had a crazy run in like 2004, 2005. Your run at this point is equally as impressive at 19 wins in a row, and you get back to the UFC 52. Were they inquiring about you during this 19 fight win? I mean, at this point, if you had 5, 6, 7 fights as a heavyweight, you know, the UFC was actively talking to people.
Yeah. So that's when I moved out to Utah. I was training with Jeremy. The UFC had contacted us. And I fought Babalu, and trained my butt off. You know, obviously Jeremy had fought Babalu, so he knew Babalu.
Yeah, they fought each other.
Yeah. And thought I was doing okay against him. He ended up catching me in an armbar in the 2nd round. But again, it was UFC 52, so it was it was Randy versus Chuck. So again, it was a huge card. I remember I walked out to the audience, and we were the co-main event. We weren't the co-main event, but we were the what did they call that?
Swing bout.
Swing bout, yeah. But so we were right before Randy and Chuck, and I remember walking out to the octagon, and like I saw like Cindy Crawford and Richard Gere and like Keanu Reeves, like all these famous, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is a big deal. Like I'm not fighting in Brad Kohler shows no more. This is the real deal. It was pretty amazing.
Wow. So that was at 205 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
During this 19-fight run, I didn't see, like I looked, I didn't see too many of them at 205. Had you made 205 prior to this?
I was going to say, this might have been my first time making 205.
And that's a stiff bout to have for your first time at 205. Like I went through it. I was really looking to see if this is your first time. And a lot of the fight finders are real difficult in regards to find weight, particularly at that time. How was that weight cut?
That one wasn't bad. I had a lot worse later on in my career. That one wasn't too bad. I think I probably only started like at 240 and then came down. Later on in my career, I had some really bad ones. But, the UFC calls and they said, you can fight 205. You can fight Babalu at 205. At that point, fighting.
Why did they want you as a heavyweight?
Not sure. Maybe because Tim was the champ and I was training with Tim.
That's probably it.
Maybe. I can't remember.
Hey, it's the Monty rule.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you a question. That night, that UFC 52, it kind of goes down as a kind of rough night for the wrestlers, And I know, you're a real wrestler first by mentality. Randy took a loss to Chuck. You had Trigg and Hughes on that card, which is another epic battle here. Was there a little bit of that wrestler mindset at the end? Like, how'd you guys deal with the after fight party and stuff like that? Seeing them celebrating and you guys, the wrestlers, kind of with their tails down.
Well, I remember taking a long time after that fight and considering not doing this no more, and just because at that point wrestling wasn't that's not all you needed to know at that point. You needed to know stand up, you needed to know jiu-jitsu, and I remember taking a long look at my career and thinking of, mommy, if I'm going to continue to do this, I got to really evolve, because at that point you couldn't get by with just being a wrestler anymore.
Wow. Yeah, so Babalu obviously losing his second round by armbar. What was shocking to me is that you made 205. I'd met you several times in person at local events, and obviously I said earlier that I'd seen you fight live. Like when you used to look at your picture, like on the Fight Fighters, like Full Contact Fighter, it was your head and traps and like maybe this much sunlight behind you. I didn't think you had it in you. I had no idea that you could make 205.
Now here, and listen to the totality of what this man said here. He went from 240 to 205, and that's not really one of the bad ones. All right.
No.
Cough up. Tell us one of the bad ones, man. Tell us a bad weight cut story.
Probably the worst was maybe the last. When I was in the finals of Bellator, when I was in the light heavyweight tournament, and that's when I fought at T-Levay.
Okay.
That the commission shouldn't allowed me to fight. I couldn't walk to the scale. I had to be carried to the scale. I made weight, and then I passed out. I got off the scale. I passed out. All I remember is I woke up and I was just bawling my eyes out. I didn't know where I was. I can't believe the commission allowed me to fight. But anyway, my corners ended up carrying me back to the hotel. No, actually, I think we went to the hospital because I got an IV. And Yeah, I mean, that was by far the worst one.
Wow.
And what'd you come down from?
Well, we were fighting, it was like every month. The tournament was every month. So I would make 205 and then I would balloon up to like literally 230 for the fight. And I'd be at 250 by like a few days after that. That's just kind of normally what I walked around at, 245, 250. And so we had to do that back to back to back 3 months in a row. And I have no
too
idea.
much.
I still communicate. I still talk to with my corner. He's just a good friend of mine. And we talk about that a lot, is like, one, how did I ever do it? And two, how did they allow me to fight? Like, just unbelievable.
All right, so
the Tunica, Mississippi, and the Mississippi Boxing Commission for the
Tunica, they don't give a shit. They
No.
don't even know what they're doing. It's like a part-time commission.
They had no clue.
Yeah. So with the UFC 52, one of the interesting footnotes to that is you're cornered by Tim Sylvia, Jeremy Horn, and Monty Cox.
Yeah.
So at this point, Monty, we've interviewed him in the past, had said just Dana and he just, the two of them just never got along. So at this point, Monty has like 30 guys in the UFC lineup, and they're offering you 205 because Tim's heavyweight. Those are words out of your mouth. So they don't want Monty anywhere near their locker room. They're telling fighters, we're taking his fight bonus back. If you tell Monty about it, he gets a penny, and we find out we're never giving you any more. Like, they were actively going after Monty Cox. And the only way Monty got around that was by taking somebody's corner pass. Were you aware of that?
No, now that you say that, it sounds familiar. I would have did anything for Monty, though. I mean,
it took care of you.
Absolutely. There were so many different circumstances, so many different times where I got a fight, or I got paid, or I got paid even better, just because I was with Monty Cox. Like,
right.
Honestly, in my opinion, he doesn't get the credit he deserves in the sport, because I'm sure numerous other fighters would say the same thing, is I wouldn't be involved in this sport if it wasn't for Monty Cox.
I believe that. And, you're not the only person saying that.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to have him on again. We're going to go through his entire lineup of guys that he managed. Like,
yeah.
Well, the magic of Monty is you take a guy like yourself there, and he could always keep you busy. He had the connection with the Russians, and then, with the Japanese and stuff like that. But let me ask you, that UFC 52 fight, am I wrong? Was that your last UFC fight?
Yep.
Did you feel like maybe that held you back a little bit, like the Monty ties there? Because they really didn't have a 205-pounder. You could have, and if they had let you be heavyweight, you could have been in that rotation with those guys pretty easy.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised that I never got a call back. I thought I fought pretty well. And I had some big wins after that. And nothing. So I kind of always felt that.
Okay.
Yeah, at that point they were targeting Monty for some reason. And I think it's because Monty was doing his best by the fighters, and there was no give with him. Some managers, what they'll do is they'll sacrifice one fighter in order to get a different fighter a favor, and Monty really didn't do that.
No.
Everybody was handled individually.
Now, at some point in terms of when you got to Sengoku, were you getting good paydays? Some of those fights that
I think Monty got me like I think it was 50 flat for the 3 Sengoku fights.
Okay, was it 50 each bout, or the completion of the 3 fights you got 50?
50 each bout.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
you fought Mo Lawal. I mean, they and you got paid, but you fought real tough when you were out there, man.
Yeah.
Well, beating Fujita, you beat their guy. That's always good for the career over there, because that elevates you. Talk a little bit about that fight, because Fujita, older guy, one-dimensional, but a legend.
Exactly. I took it on short notice. Not really short notice. It was like maybe 2 weeks. When Monty told me it was Fujita, I mean, at this point I knew And Fujita was like, you know, a huge star. And I remember it was at Saitama Super Arena.
It's the biggest.
That's incredible.
Huge arena. And it was completely silent. Like I remember being in the ring with Fujita and I could hear him breathing. Like it was that quiet. I don't know if it wasn't filled the capacity, but there was thousands of people there and they were dead silent. And I could hear Fujita breathing in the ring. I remember thinking that. And
wow,
knocked him out with a jab. And after I knocked him out, I was the most surprised person in the arena because I figured if I was going to win, it was, you know, I was going to grind him out and win a decision. You know, nobody was knocking out Fujita at that time. He was, you know, old Ironhead and a legend of the sport and a legend of how tough he was. And yeah, I threw a jab and it landed and knocked him out. And I was the most surprised person in the Saitama Super Arena that night.
So, you know, we talk about like legendary arenas and, you know, MGM Grand, you know, Madison Square Garden, obviously legendary venues, but the Saitama Super Arena, it's a different level, man. It's like the O2, you know, the O2 Saitama Super Arena, like to me, those are like a step up in regards to the other legendary venues that we have here in the United States.
Yeah, I remember before we fought, the day before, maybe even a couple days before, we went and walked around it, and it was just huge. Like it took forever to walk around it. It was just gigantic, and it took up it seemed like it took up like a whole city block. You know, it was just enormous. And then you walked inside, and the Japanese people are so respectful. You know,
and polite.
Yeah, polite. Like so much different than here in the United States, and the crowd is completely silent. Like it's just a different situation.
I'll tell you, I got to share a corner. Rankin fought over there one time, and I was there with Bolanders. We were both his corner, and Bolander looked at me and said, "Can we talk?" Because it was that quiet.
Yeah,
like a library.
Yeah.
Wow, that's nuts.
So now, did they make you make 205 for King Mo?
I made 205 no, that was heavyweight. That was my second fight in Sengoku, and then my third fight was the one where I took 4 groin shots in the first round.
Stan Nedkov.
Yeah, and that was at 205.
After your bout with Nedkov, was there a conversation between you guys ever, or was that it?
No, not really.
That's bizarre, man. Like who was cornering you that event? I couldn't get a beat on it.
It was a friend I have. We're still friends with him. Wrestled with him in college. I definitely think if I had, you know, a more experienced corner, that the fight would have not continued.
No, they shouldn't. Even Boss Rutan was like pleading for you not to do it.
Yeah.
Like it was, Miguel, you should have seen, like in the 4th round, he's literally just almost ready to throw up, and they're comforting him. And then I'm like, all right, it's over. You know, I hope he's good. Get him out of the ring. And then it's just like, I can keep going. Like what?
Yeah. It's one of those things where they shouldn't ask the fighter.
No.
I think that's incredibly rude. Like it's absolutely not. It's not even up to him at that point. It's up to the corner. But you know, as Travis stated, he wasn't equipped, you know, with the right guy. Like if you had a Brian Garrity or you know even a Tim Sylvia or anybody, Jeremy Horn, that fight was over.
Now was Monty with you?
He went with me, I think, for the Fujita fight.
Okay.
I think that's the only time he went with me to Japan.
Because what worries me here is after Nedkov, you know, with 4 low blows, like that's kind of like a cold way to send you off. You know, they could have had. Did you feel like you should have gotten one more fight? Is that something?
With Miguel, they never even took a point from Nedkov. Yeah. They never even. I don't even think they put up a yellow card for that.
No, nothing.
you know, and here's the thing is a promoter could take that a couple of ways, but when you get it, like from my feeling is the guy did that and Travis was pretty much nothing but a good soldier, right? He didn't complain, didn't make it ugly, let them raise the other guy's hand in the ring. And then, you know, so you look out for guys like that and bring them back, you know? So was that something that you also thought about?
I was hoping, I think it was, maybe it was right after that I started fighting with Bellator.
Okay.
Well, right after that, you got to remember that this just took place in May of 2009. And, you know, there's fights in between this. But your next fight of note that I have is King of the Cage, Mike Kyle, the no contest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that was in New Mexico. And I remember we flew into New Mexico. They had a driver pick us up at the airport. And we were driving to the venue, it was at a casino. And I remember we kept up driving this, going up this mountain, and we just went higher and higher. We were going in a circle, and we just kept going higher and higher and higher. And I looked at my corner. I'm like, what the hell is the elevation of this? And it was like 10,000 feet. And I'm like, oh my God. So I knew at that point my cardio was done. And I remember we got to the hotel, and there was like a long flight of stairs up to the lobby. And I walked up those stairs and I was like winded. I was gassed. I'm like, this isn't going to be good. Yeah. And then the fight with Kyle is, I think he landed a shot after the first round, I think. And initially they gave the win to him. And then Monty about probably 2 weeks later got it changed to a no contest.
Yeah. So in essence, Miguel, what takes place is he got punched after the bell. Travis gets punched after the bell, and it affected him in a way to where he couldn't continue. And I don't know if it was on purpose or it wasn't on purpose, but it was absolutely after the bell. And then, like, as a commission, you know, and Monty, obviously a brilliant mixed martial art mind, you kind of take on the totality of the participants and everybody involved. And at this point, Mike Kyle at the WEC event, WEC 20, got suspended in 2006 for 2 years because he kept kicking and continuing to go after Michael Olson, a downed opponent, a guy that he already knocked out. And it was like they needed like 3 or 4 people to hold him back. Like, I think there might be a chemical imbalance at Mike Kyle's like side. And it was almost as if it was a reoccurring. This is like his first fight back after like that incident. And immediately, you know, he tries to win a fight by foul.
Who was running King of the Cage at that point? Like, what promoter were you dealing with?
It was Terry.
Okay. Now, again, here's a situation where now Mike had a reputation already, as our buddy Mike here pointed out, you know. And here's a situation where you're done wrong. Did they ever bring you back? Did they ever offer you, make it, you know, sometime, or was it just like, hey man, sorry, and shake your hand and keep going? Because that's some rough treatment, you know.
Pretty much. I don't know if I fought for King of the Cage again.
Miguel, you know what's odd? He looks like the King of the Cage loved the bald white guy, ripped up logo. They even had a dude that they paid to open up the cage door that looked like their logo.
Yeah.
Travis could have filled that role, and they, you know, and they didn't call him back. But that is rough treatment. I agree.
Yeah, I don't think I fought for King of the Cage again. No, I did. I did actually. Just it wasn't too many years ago. It was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was in a small show in Wisconsin.
Okay, yeah, Ron Carter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Big Poppa Schnake was the ring announcer that evening. And Big Poppa Schnake probably called about a dozen of your fights.
Yeah.
Did you ever get the opportunity to hang out with him? Did you know him at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to know him pretty well. I remember fighting in Reno, Nevada. he was the announcer. I remember we hung out a lot that night. Yeah, hung out with him a lot. He did a lot of Kohler shows in Minnesota. Legend. I mean, a legend of the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys got along, I'm assuming?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Got along really well. I mean, I loved him, you know, he was so honest, you know, I can still hear him. Like, he'd come up, he'd be right in your ear. And he was honest with you, though. If you didn't fight well that night, or you needed to work on this or work on that, like, I mean, he was a good guy, and he loved.
Yeah, he had encyclopedic type knowledge of mixed martial arts as well.
Yeah,
like he was just, he could recall facts.
Yeah,
like nobody else, man. Just brilliant guy.
Yep.
Travis, were you much? Did you party afterwards? You're not a drinker, are you?
No, I've never. Sorry about that. I've never drank in my life, or I drank once in my life, so I was never a big partier.
So you were babysitting Shanaki then, huh? It's always good when you got the big bodyguard, I can tell you that.
He wasn't a big drinker either, though.
No, he wasn't. Hardly ever, right?
I think he may have been sober, actually. I think he was straight edge.
Yeah.
You would have never guessed it based on his personality, but that inhibition that he didn't have was completely sober, which is frightening.
And there was still babysitting to do, because Shanaki, he was never quiet. You know what I mean? So
yeah. So
yeah, and you know, at this point, I think Mario Roberto was your corner.
Yeah.
When did you transition to his school?
So he opened a jiu-jitsu gym in my hometown, Rochester, Minnesota. And I started training with him full time. 2012, maybe.
Now let me ask you: is this full on putting on the gi kind of training with him?
I wore my gi a little bit. He was pretty traditional. After about a year, I didn't wear a gi, but I did wear a gi for a little bit.
Okay. And how would you compare him to Comprito?
Honestly, Mario is one of the best guys I've ever worked with on the ground. Amazing how talented he is. Amazing how good he is. Comprito was bigger. He was probably a bigger version of Mario. But Mario's amazing on the ground.
So Miguel,
I'd probably go like Jeremy Horn 1, Mario 2, and maybe Comprito 3.
Okay.
So Miguel, this is not the first time we've brought Mario Roberto's name up on this podcast.
Yeah, Mario's got, I don't know if you know, Travis, he's got real ties to Evansville and Hook and Shoot. And
yes.
A lot of the early guys, like even before I was there, I used to train with him. He'd come up there. And once I was matchmaker, I actually stuck him in with Jeremy Horn. And I think they did a half-hour grappling match together.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about guys who were around in the 90s. So it's good to hear Mario. Is Mario still living up there?
Yeah. He still has a school. It's doing really well. I don't get a chance to go to it anymore just because I moved a little bit further away. But I still, stay in touch with him. And his school's doing great. He's doing really well.
He's got a win over a junior in high school at the time named Aaron Riley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, heel hooked him. Heel hooked him in a tournament. Yeah, Aaron Riley was like 16, 17 years old in a grown man's tournament. Yeah, he's an absolute stud. So, Miguel, we have a virtual library that we're still working on. We'll always be working on the next opponent I'm going to bring up, and that is Jeff Monson.
Oh boy.
So you win a split decision over Jeff Monson at Cage Fighting Extreme.
This is Target Center in Minneapolis. It's the main event. So
Did you use your mouthpiece that night, or did Jeff use your mouthpiece?
I can't remember that.
Well, no, it's not. We got a lot of Jeff stories, and he apparently didn't bring a mouthpiece to a place.
Oh, really?
He actually stole Garrity's mouthpiece, used it, and returned
Never
it.
asked him. Was going to return it without telling him. Yeah, I got caught. Yeah, I know Jeff is.
Yeah, talk about the fight first, and then if you got any Jeff Munson memories from that day, because
the fight wasn't the most exciting fight. He couldn't take me down, I couldn't take him down. Neither of our stand-ups were great. I ended up winning a split decision. I think I might have got one takedown off the cage on him, but he popped right back up, I think. Huge win for me at that time, one of the biggest wins I'd had. I remember I was just getting ready to go to the arena, and I went down the hotel elevator, and Munson was in he was working out in the workout room, and we ran into each other, and obviously I knew who Jeff Munson was, and man, we sat there and talked for probably 30 minutes, and great guy. It just really stuck out to me, why he was working out prior to the fight. And, at that point, he was, I wouldn't say he was old by then, but he was starting to, and he said it just took him so long to get warmed up and to just be ready to fight. And that kind of always stuck with me, because now I'm starting to get to that point where part of the majority of the workout is just getting warmed up. But that's kind of always stuck out to me, and just how nice of a guy he was. I think I first met him at one of your shows, Miguel. I don't know if he cornered somebody. Mm-hmm. No, he fought Pat. Did he fight Pat Stano?
Yeah, he fought on those early MFC shows for sure.
Yeah, and I met him there. Didn't get really a chance to talk to him, but he's kind of one of the guys I've always looked up to, just because his grappling is so great. And I remember, a couple hours prior to us fighting, I got a chance to talk to him, and that was a pretty cool experience for me.
Travis, I got to tell you something, man. If I were to recommend one interview that we've ever done, it's Dennis Hallman. The relationship between those two guys, like Hallman didn't even want to talk about fights. He wanted to talk about messing with Jeff Monson. Yeah. And like these stories that were being told, like they were not believable. Like they were just like, come on, there's no way you'd be living if you did something like that. So when we interviewed Jeff, he was like laughing. Oh yeah, he did that. Like essentially it was like, well, yeah, I worked security at a party. He said, oh, here's your payment. It's in an envelope, and there was cash in the envelope, but also pictures when he broke in my house and urinated on mine and my wife's toothbrush. And we had no idea when he did it, so we've been brushing our teeth with it. Oh, and I'd be like, you didn't murder him? Nah, it was pretty funny. Yeah, no, it was pretty. Yeah, I mean, it was just like, we thought Dennis was lying to us a week ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so you didn't have any bizarre stories or dealings with him, huh?
No, nothing really. I mean, we crossed paths in the hotel, and that was really about it.
I do. Fascinating human being. Yeah. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
You fought on M1 Global April 4, 2019 against Josu Lugo.
Yeah.
And Lugo at the time weighed 332 and you weighed 255 pounds.
So promoter told me it was at heavyweight. Get to the show and I see my opponent and I clearly realize he's above 265. Shannon Rich was kind of like the promoter. They're using his license.
Oh gosh.
That's frightening.
And he told me, he's a little above 265. So I'm thinking, okay, he's 280, 285 for sure.
290.
And he got on the scale and he was well over 300.
Did they fine him and give you some of his purse?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. He's 332. So they used Shannon's promoter license, and Travis Fulton and Shannon Rich were on the undercard. Did you watch that fight?
Yep.
Did it appear like legit, or was there acrobatics taking place?
No, it was pretty legit because Shannon threw a high kick and it landed, and that pissed Travis off. And then it went into the second round and Shannon got tired and Travis was able to take him down. But it was legit because I remember talking to Travis after the fight, and he was pissed that he got hit with a high kick. And
what do you think? Do you think it was a double cross on a fixed fight? Pissed?
No, I don't think so, because I'd been around Travis enough, and
you know when he's up to something.
yeah.
The Yamma pit fighting tournament, you won that.
Yes.
Do you still have that belt? One more time.
What's that?
Do you
it
still
was
have
a
the
huge
belt?
night for me. You know, a lot of people make fun of that night or make fun of Yamma and this or that, but that was a huge night for me. I had 3 good wins, beat Rico. That propelled me into Sengoku, which got me those really good paydays. And Sengoku paid well. I think I got paid like 10 grand. You know, a lot of people give that show grief, but that was a great night for me.
I think it was just more like the gimmick aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, they kept talking about the pit. So essentially Yamma they had like, I don't know, kind of like a wedge against the cage. So it allowed fighters to kind of get off their back faster. And that's what they were like, oh yeah, we got a wedge. We got the wedge. And it kind of, you know, in MMA folklore, message boards and things of that nature, it was kind of, you know, an easy, let's pick on this point. When everybody in that tournament was legit. And, you know, unlike that show in Minnesota that we talked about earlier, everyone got paid.
Yeah. I got paid well.
Now, what was that, you know, was that your first time meeting Mark Kerr?
Yeah. First time at Mark Kerr, met Butterbean.
So they were going like the Triller route. I mean, if you really look at it, they were just kind of ahead of their time. They had Butterbean, Mark Kerr. They were going a Triller route, except, you know, the social media wasn't what it is today then as it is today.
Oleg Taktara fought on that card. I met him.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a great night.
Anybody that fights on Yamma, we bring it up.
One of those guys that's still fighting in UFC is Alexei Oleinik. Is it?
Yeah.
I want to ask you about Kerr. How, you know, as a wrestler, as a guy who's been watching the sport now, Kerr's probably a guy you looked up to at this point. Now in 2008, you're getting a real like how did that feel? Like talk from a wrestler and like a
So I grew up into the sport watching Kerr, and obviously with his wrestling background, he was a huge influence of mine. But at this point, it wasn't the Mark Kerr it wasn't the smashing machine. You know what I mean? It was 270 pounds, not looking good Mark Kerr. That was kind of sad to see him like that. Just because the Mark Kerr that I seen was the smashing machine, and that was a little bit disturbing to see it that.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, earlier in this conversation, we had talked about Mark Kerr working out at Brock Lessnar's place.
Yeah.
Were you aware of why he stopped working out there?
No.
So, I mean, and this is out of Mark's admission in interviews. This is not something that
maybe
I would never forward this unless it came out of Mark's mouth, and you could easily verify this on YouTube. Essentially, as he went on a bender.
Yeah, I did do this. Yep.
Yeah, went on a bender, and it was kind of affecting Brock's family. And Brock is one of those guys that's very rigid in regards to what his family is exposed to. And he asked Mark to leave.
Yeah. Now you say that, I do recall that.
Yeah, Brock had a pretty strict policy in regards to, what was and was not allowed, on his compound.
Now, let me ask you a question. When you get booked to train with Brock Lessnar for 6 months to a year, do you actually sign a contract? Does it get to be like that? Because I could see that,
The last time I was supposed to, they wanted me to sign a contract, but I could only make it up there like once a week, and that just wasn't good enough for them, which I understood, whatever. But prior to that, I'd never had to sign anything. But yeah, there was talks about that.
Did they pay you?
Brock may have gave me some money, but it was never, like $100 or something. But took care of me as far as meals, gas. Talked to me on the phone quite a bit about like personal issues, things that he had gone through in the past that I was going through at the time. His wife, who is Sable, who is like a WWE or WWF diva. Yeah. She used to babysit my daughter. Wow. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, sometimes like in boxing, it doesn't translate to mixed martial arts yet. Is a lot of times they break off their training partners, a percentage of their purse. And it's unfortunate you don't really see that in mixed martial arts. You don't see that in MMA, especially when you're bringing people in.
And Travis, that may just be you being local and kind of bad luck again, and you hate to harp on that, but I'm pretty sure he was paying Comprito. I'm pretty sure he was paying Kerr, so, and that's why I headed towards that thing of the contract, you're going to pay somebody. Kerr probably had a sign saying, hey, Kerr fucked up, and he had a good gig there.
Yeah, no kidding.
So,
that's probably why you had those personal conversations with them.
Yeah.
It's because you weren't taking his money. Everyone else,
Yeah.
If you're paying somebody, they're not your friend.
Yeah. No, I remember specifically, we were talking about child support, and it's something that he had gone through and I was going through it at the time. And man, we had quite a few pretty long conversations on the phone about, topics like that, I didn't expect Brock Lesnar to be taking his time to talk to me about, but yeah, he definitely helped me a lot.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone that I've talked to in regards to him, there's levels of celebrity. That guy can't leave his house without, getting hassled. Like he's not getting away with anything ever.
No.
And, and he's instead of being in Florida or Texas, California, New York, the guy's sitting in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota.
Yep. No, great guy. And, we had.
What was his house like?
Obviously, very nice. It was a huge, like complex. A typical out in the middle of nowhere.
Secluded, huh?
Yeah, it took me forever to find it.
15 acres, his house, a guest house, like that.
Yeah. And like I talked about, I was a huge pro wrestling fan, and his wife Sable was like a huge deal, like one of the greatest WWE divas of all time. And I pulled up, got out of the truck I had with my daughter. My daughter was probably less than 2. And he's like, hey, my wife's in the house. Just take my wife up, or take your daughter up to my wife and she'll watch her. And I'm like, you want me to take my daughter up to your wife, who's Sable, who I've never met, and say, hey, here's my daughter? He's like, yeah, go ahead. And I'm like, I remember knocking on the door and just being freaked out, like it was just a crazy experience.
She made Mark Merrow. Without her, Mark Merrow would just be a mid-card guy. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, she had star power, 100%.
Yep.
All right, so this is the part of the interview I need every detail on a question I'm about to ask you. And it's the only person that really gives a shit about this. It's pretty much me. But like, it really means a lot to me. I need to know about the greatest athletic event ever to take place that you were almost a part of, Gender Wars. Brad Kohler had this amazing event called Gender Wars.
Oh, man. So this probably takes the cake. So this is like after I was done with Kohler, I hadn't talked to him for years. And he gets a hold of me.
Let me ask you, though. You said you were done with it, but you were done like on a good basis. Like you used.
Yeah.
From the beginning, tell us everything.
I can't really say anything too bad about him, but so he contacted, this is just a few years ago, and he contacts me and says he's doing a show, and I was supposed to fight Wes Sims. It's going to be in a warehouse in Minnesota, but we're telling everybody that it's in Russia. So obviously I'm not dumb, but I go along with it, because it doesn't really affect me. Like,
yo, dude, I want to know more for sure. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah,
I'm gonna train. I'm gonna train regardless.
Right.
So I just go along with it. I'm like, okay, Kohler. Like, so this is probably 2 months prior to the event, a month prior to the event, and I'm like, Kohler, what am I gonna tell people? What I'm going to Russia, and I'm literally gonna be gone for a day.
Yeah, give me the alibi.
And he's like, we'll get you a hotel up here in Minneapolis. It's gonna be in this secluded warehouse, and I just continue to go along with it. Obviously, I know it's BS, and I'm not telling anybody about this because it's just complete nonsense. And I'm going along with it. Like, I'm fine with it. I'm not really.
He's paid you every time before, and I think these were decent paydays he was throwing around, right?
Nah, he was giving him a couple $100. He wasn't giving him decent paydays.
But for this, he's going to pay me like $5,000, and I. Obviously, I'm not dumb, Kohler. Like, I know this is.
The business. Yeah.
But he continues to go. I mean, we're like the week of the show, and I think he wanted me to send like a picture of my like a headshot. And
maybe it was for the visa to get to Russia.
Yeah, and. I ended up not doing it. I can't remember why, but he literally like texted me in the middle of the night, and he's like, "You're off the card. Like, I'm gonna sue you, and you'll never fight again in the state of Minnesota." And I'm like, Kohler, what the heck happened? Like, I thought this was legit. I thought, like, obviously I knew it wasn't legit, but I thought like this was.
Yeah, you didn't pretend well enough.
I don't know. And so he pulled me off the card like the day prior. And then some guy contacted me, and I did an interview where I told the whole truth, and Kohler was so pissed at me, and he kept calling me and saying I was going to get sued, and his lawyer was going to contact me. But yeah, by far the most bizarre idea that
okay. Was there a money guy? I mean, I'm trying to like piece this together because one, I love it. Like, to me, this is like a Scooby-Doo mystery. Yeah. This is not an investigation. This is a mystery. There's a big difference between those two. So I'm thinking, okay, so me and Sims are tight. So he starts telling me about, Shannon Rich is on the card. He's a part of it. You got this dude fighting this chick from like Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. It's for $1 million, That's
right. That's right.
Yeah, it's for like $1 million. And, they're advertising it on social media. And Sims is just like, yeah, no, dude, it's like this whole thing I think is like fake. And I start getting on their like Facebook, social media, because I wanted, after the woman beat the guy, I wanted her second fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, that's me. I want that. So I start going to pro wrestling mode, you know, like saying just like, I'm going to beat this woman, you know, and it's just like, you shouldn't say those things, but it's like, wait a minute. I'm just trying to sell a fight. Yo, Brad, I'm just trying to get the next bout, dude. I want to make $1 million, you know? And it was one of the most bonkers thing. I'm assuming that there was a money guy. Brad was just doing a kind of like a slow pull out of him. And we're going to make millions on pay-per-view. Guy bought into it. We're going to save a ton of money by not actually going to Russia. Why he picked that country, who knows? I mean, he could have said, you know, Nebraska. There's no commission there. Save money, do it in a warehouse, and we're going to clean up on pay-per-view. And I talked to Sims, and, you know, Sims was very tight-lipped about it. Like, he was just like, yeah, dude, it's kind of bullshit. He's like, I don't even know where it's at. They're not telling me. They're making me check in saying I'm flying to Russia on it. Yeah. Keep your mouth shut. I'm like, of course, yeah, I'm not going down that road. So I'm like, yeah, you know, not a problem. Anyway, you know, I'm trying to get this rematch anyway, you know, or not the rematch, but the second bout with this woman. So I'm in full pro wrestling mode at this point. And they gave Sims like 10 grand. Sims and Coleman were there. They would not budge until West got the money. And then for somehow the commission caught wind of it. I think it was kind of like a really poor kept secret. And Sims wouldn't give the cash back.
So this is all news to me. So Wes, Sims, and Coleman were actually there?
They were there. And Sims wouldn't give the cash back. And the guy, the replacement fighter for yourself, was a guy that I hooked up. And he drove to Russia from Chicago, and Sims gave him $1 grand. And it was I think it was in Michigan. And I would love to interview the money guy. I really, you know, it was probably like a factory accident. You know, maybe hit by a truck, you know, something like where he came into a lot of money that he probably shouldn't have had, and Kohler got as much out of him as he possibly could.
Yeah, so that's all new, because I kind of thought that the whole thing was BS. Like I didn't really think Wes Sims even knew about it, but he was there.
He was 100% there. 100% there.
Oh, Kohler's got balls that big, dude. Are you kidding me? So, but what I wanted to ask you is, one of the repercussions for that is that I think Kohler and several other people 8 suspensions from the commission.
With like $10,000 fines on top of that.
You got your name out of there before any of that. You're clean.
I talked to the commissioner. It was shortly after the event, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't get anything. And no, I didn't get anything at all.
So,
but
go ahead.
Because I remember the commissioner wanted to know. And I spilled my guts to him. Like, I told him everything just because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't involved in it.
Yeah, you compete. You know, I mean, you're still trying to compete.
And the crazy thing is, like, I didn't pull out. Like, Kohler pulled me off the card. If he went to did that, like, I would have did it. Like, I'm really surprised. I'm really surprised that it actually that like Sims was there and Coleman was there.
Well, fights actually took place. Shannon Rich actually did fight. I mean, it was a fake fight, but he definitely did fight, and he got fined for it. And his excuse was, "No, it was a fixed fight. This is like, you know, theater, blah 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 blah." And the woman won by like knee bar. Sims gave me a heads up of like how the women's fight was going to end. So I would go on that message board going, "I predict she wins by arm bar." Like, I would always screw up whatever ending that was supposed to come through by publicly like posting it. And no, man. What do you think the reason was that he pulled you off this pretend fight?
I have no idea. Until this day, I don't know, because I definitely didn't pull myself. I didn't pull out of the fight, but I remember he texted me it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, because I didn't text him. I was supposed to text him the day, it was like Thursday. And I didn't text him. I can't remember why. And then he pulled me off the card. And then I was like, screw it. You want to go that way? Then I'll tell everybody the truth. And, but yeah, if he didn't pull me off, I would have been in the same boat as him.
Maybe, yeah, you could have done, like you were saying, how long am I going to stay for? You should have had like a local MMA journalist drop you off in the woods and just go, yeah, pick me up in like 3 days. And just like walk into the woods like those old school, kumites.
Yeah,
I think that's what the move.
I didn't even know that the event happened.
Yeah, it did. I think Shannon the Cannon is still suspended from fighting like outside of like Indian reservations in foreign countries.
Really?
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
That is insane.
So Travis, who was your favorite referee ever to fight in front of?
Favorite referee, Big John. He reffed when I fought in Abu Dhabi. He reffed that. Both UFCs, a couple other ones. Just because you knew you were getting the real deal, you didn't have to worry about anything when it came to the ref. Trying to think of the other one. I can't think of it, but probably Big John.
Yeah.
Cool. Now let me ask you a question. Or somewhere along here, you had a long Bellator run too. Was that
yes?
Was that with still under Bjorn Rebney, or was that with Scott Coker?
No, that was with Rebney when they were doing tournaments. They initially they had me just do a 1-fight deal. I fought their champ, their 205-pound champ, Mupumbu, and I was the first guy to beat one of their champs in a non-tournament.
Why was it a non-title bout?
That's just the way they were doing things then. Because everything evolved around the tournament at that point in Bellator. And then they brought me back. I was in the tournament, lost in the finals. And then they brought me back again. And probably had the worst concussion I've ever had. He knocked me out. And that was a pretty bad one. And then I think I fought from 5 times.
Who was that? Ryan Martínez?
Ryan Martínez, yep.
Okay. Now, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, do you have memory issues with CTE?
I don't know. Like, when we were communicating back and forth, like I was gonna say, like, I don't really remember a lot about my fights. And then you would bring something up and I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I would look at like SureDog or Tapology and then look at my record and be like, oh yeah, like I can remember the story or I can remember that fight. But yeah, there's honestly like a lot of things I just don't remember.
If you thought
I don't know if it was because it was like 20 years ago or if it's CTE.
So you're not like looking for your car keys and they're like in your bread basket or anything like that nature.
No.
Have you looked into alternative treatments like mushrooms or lion's mane psilocybin, things of that nature, in order for kind of preventative measures for memory?
No, I don't. So I'm a paraprofessional at the high school and I think if I notice something, because I'm in the classroom with the students full time. If I think I was experiencing something, I would experience it in the classroom, but I don't have any problems there. I think it's just because it was so long ago. Like I just don't remember. Like,
would you, if you thought about like psilocybin or getting involved with those studies?
I mean, if they contact, I mean, I don't know. I guess I've never thought about it.
Well, let me ask you, Travis, because you said that was your worst concussion. Do you have a number in your head? How many have you been through?
I think every time you've been knocked out, you experience a concussion. So I think I have 20 losses by, no, I have 15 losses by KO. And I'd imagine probably another 15 in practice. So I'd probably say around 30.
Yeah, there's like, back in those days, training in that Militich gym, those are rough days. They talk, so it's the kind of thing. Look, let me tell you, we do these interviews. You've been talking to us for a couple hours. You sound great, and it's all good. So congratulations with that. But don't, if somebody gives you a chance to take care of yourself, something like stem cells or something, don't be shy about it, because you've been through something not everybody on the planet can say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So congrats.
About 100 car crashes you've been through.
Yeah. The crazy thing is like I still feel really good. Like, I don't get the opportunity to fight much anymore, and I know it's because of my age and my record doesn't help me. And just at the level I'm at, there's not a lot of shows no more. But like I still feel really good. It's really crazy to me, like how good I still feel. So I guess I'm just fortunate.
Have you, like, if you had met, and I was talking to Miguel about this about a couple of weeks ago in regards to yourself, had you met Mario Roberto earlier on in your career, do you think you would have concentrated mostly on jiu-jitsu tournaments?
No, I did a few jiu-jitsu tournaments. I don't like them.
Really?
No, I don't. They're too. I don't want to be like rude, but they're too lazy. Like, I think jiu-jitsu is a very lazy sport. I've started to do more wrestling tournaments, like masters wrestling tournaments, and I really enjoy those. They have a world tournament coming up in October or November. I'm going to try to do. It's in Greece. I really enjoy those. I've tried a few jiu-jitsu tournaments. And I don't like the vibe with them. I don't want to say anything bad about jiu-jitsu, but it's not my thing.
Yeah, you had talked to Miguel. I said, had you like implemented a Jeff Monson type, like stalling? He does a lot of stalling in his grappling. Like, you're absolutely capable of implementing that same system. Yeah. And I think you probably would have done well in Abu Dhabi, as well as with some of the bigger tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of one of the reasons why I always looked up to Monson, is because he was such a great grappler, and his technique and style was, a little bit different than everybody else's. Very similar to mine.
Yeah, I think you could have won well. Okay. Yeah. Well, Miguel, I think that's a wrap, man. We got him over 2 hours, so we certainly got all the juice we could squeeze, at least this time.
Yeah, we could probably have you back for a rain check, because there's a lot of stuff in between here I'd like to get into at some point. But I want to thank you.
But could you see his record? Like, there's so much there to where we would normally dig in, in one area that. I mean, we're 2.5 hours. Like, you can't, because it's just, Miguel, it's one of the most intimidating records I've ever looked at. Like, we had Jeremy Horn. Obviously, we've had other 100 Fight Club members. Man, that record is so intimidating, man, especially when you're OCD and you got to like really kind of buckle down on it.
Now, let me ask you, to wrap it up here, we spent a couple hours with you. I've known you, from the business a while, and you're, quiet. You keep to yourself. You seem like a happy guy. You got your daughter, you got your life going on, stuff. And that's interesting to me, because you could be bitter, because there are a few times in your career where almost, you know what I mean? It's like, some of the guys that you've been in, does that affect you at all, or you overall stay happy?
I'm a very happy person. I very happy with where I'm at and what I'm doing, and that I've did all those fights, and I've gotten to travel around the world, and I'm still healthy, and I still think I can compete. I obviously probably not with the top guys. I'm a self realist. I don't think I can compete for the UFC title, but I still think I can compete with
high level guys.
A lot of guys. So I'm just happy where I'm at and happy with what I've experienced. And I've gotten to see so many cool things in this world. I got to go to Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Like that's like another world, you know, that's like a different place completely. And I've gotten to fight in Hawaii and Brazil and all over the world and see things I've never would have gotten to see, and met so many like awesome people that I'm still communicate with and talk to. I would have never got to meet them if it wasn't for this sport. So I'm just fortunate to, you know, to be involved in it, and I'm a pretty happy person. So
that's good.
That's all. You know, Mike and I both do a little bit of dabbling in history and stuff, and boxing is just so filled with like stories of like, you know, bitter endings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's so cool when I catch up with someone like you, who I think probably could have gotten further in the sport, and maybe has a reason for it, and you're not, and that's just fucking awesome, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, you know, he never put all of his eggs in one basket. He always had a professional career, and like his marathon or outlet was, you know, he liked the cage fight. You know, it's
So
that's very good.
I've always enjoyed the competition. You know, I've never looked at it as a grudge, or I've never gone into a fight angry. I love fighting, and I love competition, and fighting is the ultimate form of competition, and it's just.
Yeah. So Travis, how many times have you been stiffed by a promoter?
I don't know. Not a lot. I mean,
any names come to the top of that list that you care to share?
You know, I'm trying to think.
Well, that dude who didn't give you your ticket money.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as I got involved, as soon as my name was attached to Monty Cox, I got paid every time. Because nobody was going to screw with Monty Cox. And we're going back 18 years. And
that's cool. That's good. I mean, it's one less thing you got to worry about, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
So how about an injury? What was like the worst injury you had to deal with? Because it is also good that you're healthy. And
I was fighting Tim Hague up in Edmonton, and
Stud.
Yeah, he hit me with a flying knee, and it cracked my sternum.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I took him down after that, and I was on top of him, and I was just in shock. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And the ref stood us up. And again, I was just too stubborn to go down. But I couldn't even keep my hands up. I was just, I couldn't do anything. I was just frozen. And he hit me with an overhand right. And that was a bad knockout as well. But yeah, the cracked sternum was the worst injury I've had.
Okay. Well,
you know, the last 8 years of Jeff Monson's career, he fought with one eye and never told anybody.
Really?
Yeah, he admitted that in the interview with us.
Wow.
That's
unbelievable.
He admitted a lot of shit.
Yeah. Oh, Wizinator. Oh, yeah. Hallman outed him for shooting like someone else's urine and into his own liver so he could pass a pee test.
Actually, I've done some medical research on this. He did say liver in the interview. He corrects himself later, and he does correctly say bladder. That's where he injected it into his bladder, so they get you can shooting.
And Hallman's concern
shooting pee into your liver will kill you.
Yeah, Hallman's concern was, well, that's how you get an infection, or I think that's how you get an infection. Like dude, what was going on in Washington back in the day? You know, Benji Raddick, Dennis Hallman, Aaron Riley, Josh Barnett, Salivary, like that whole scene was nuts.
Wow.
That's why we got to get you back on, Travis, because I got a feeling that those days at Militich and stuff, that you're just the quiet guy in the corner, but you got a lot of stories, man. You got a lot of stories.
Yeah, there were good times down there. That was a true family. You know, I wouldn't say I was really involved in in it because I was kind of traveling back and forth, and kind of came into the show a little bit late. But man, I had many good talks with Matt Hughes. Tim took care of me whenever I was down there. Pat passed on so much information to me. It was a pretty cool experience.
Why do you think Miletich Fighting Systems gym quit or closed?
Probably egos. And I think once Jeremy left, that was kind of the glue that held it together. And Jeremy left to Utah, and it just seemed like things kind of went downhill from there. The other guys started to open up their other gyms, and they wanted to open up their own gym. But I think the initial downfall was Jeremy leaving.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, because you're a heavyweight, right? So you get there, you got Tim Sylvia. They had other guys going through there, Nate Schroeder and stuff like that. They had a secret weapon dude named Mark Hansen. Do you remember Mark? Did you get a chance?
I met Mark the very first time I was down there in the Quad Cities. Probably one of the strongest guys I had ever worked out with.
Compare him to Lessnar, because he is,
Lessnar,
like that. He's almost that kind of athlete. Lessner's special, I know that, but Hansen could move for a 280 pounder like nobody else, man.
Lessnar wasn't freakishly strong like I thought he would be. I worked out with a lot of heavyweights, and Lessnar didn't jump out to me like Hansen did. Tim Sylvia, one of the hardest guys I've ever had taking down. Like, his hips and just the amount of work he put into his technique as far as defending the takedown, like, unbelievably hard to take down. I don't know if I ever got a takedown on him. Justin Eilers, man, that kid was strong, unbelievably strong, like freakishly strong, like where you were scared to work out with him because he didn't know his own strength.
Wow.
And he would just do awkward things, and you'd just be like, we shouldn't work out because you don't understand how strong you are.
Wow.
Yeah, that was definitely a special room up there. And I'm sure they'd all say that about you too, bro.
Yeah, I think part of their downfall as well, if I had to kind of pinpoint it, is the veteran kind of just group. They ran a lot of the new guys out. Yeah. So it was kind of like they kept getting older, but there wasn't like a younger pack or younger herd to kind of take their place. Yep. It was they kind of ran out to other places, because I know several people that went there that went on to have fantastic UFC careers, but said, they chased me out of there. Marcus Davis is one. I mean, he'll readily admit that. Yeah, they ran me out of there.
It was definitely a close-knit group. I fought in the IFL, and that's how I really got brought into the group, because I was on Miletich's team.
Did you get a ring?
No, I never did, because I got not traded, but I got moved to a different team. The championship round or whatever.
Rothwell took your spot, I'm assuming?
What's that?
Did Rothwell take your spot?
Yeah, and then I went to Frank Shamrock's team.
I thought Rothwell was there from the beginning, no?
I was at 205.
Oh, then
so the first...
Oh, it was Mike Sinisovich at 205, or was he 85?
No, I was there, and I took Mike's spot. And then the second one...
Dude, we're going IFL trivia, and I don't have any notes in front of me. I need you guys to note that. So go ahead. I apologize.
And then the second one, I went up to heavyweight, and then that's when Mike came in. Okay. And then the championship...
And that's where Ben had his standoff with them.
Yeah.
Like in regards to contracts.
Yeah. And then the third one was when I got moved to Frank Shamrock's team. I have no idea why.
Now, did you meet Frank?
I did. He's I got a chance to work out with him the night before the show. After weigh-ins, we worked out together, and I learned more in that workout than I had in a number of years.
Why does Jeremy Horn badmouth them?
I was just gonna say he's definitely eccentric. He's different, but as far as a coach, man, his knowledge was unbelievable. Like he could really pinpoint things. But he's definitely I don't want to say weird, but he's just eccentric. He's a little different.
Yeah. He likes to refer to himself in the third person.
Yeah.
He always, the legend. He refers to himself as the legend in third person. But he did color commentary. And dude, we're taking up a shitload of your time, so I'm apologizing.
No, you're good, man. This is fun. I love it.
Dude, we're so far off topic right now. This is probably where we should have started. So he does color commentary at like the Playboy Mansion. And they sit a blonde next to him. I don't have her name, nor would I ever, because I don't care. And he's on like a date. Like he doesn't give a shit what's happening in that cage. She's like, well, hey, first he first tells her that he's the legend. And then he starts kind of like letting her know what's happening in there. But he's the champ. And dude, it's literally a blind date that you're on. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, he was definitely a little different. Great coach, though.
Like Jeremy shits on his groundwork, but what did he go over with you? Like,
no, stand up, and just being a wrestler and be able to put those two things together.
And let's call it what it is. Like what he does in a match can be completely separate than the knowledge and the ability he has to explain things away.
Yeah.
So why did you never leave Minnesota in regards to training? You never really did.
I moved out to Utah for about a year.
But you stayed like in that same, like you never got out of like
I never really
Militich
needed
fighting
to.
or Minnesota.
I never really needed to. I was close enough to Pat's where I could go down there. I had a lot of confidence in Dave Monet. And then by that time, and I started working with Mario, I just didn't feel I needed to.
Okay. You didn't feel like going one of those like super gyms like Eric Del Fiero or Mark Delagrate, any of those guys, huh?
No, I kind of knew what I was good at, and Mario was great on the ground, or he's great on the ground, and I felt like I had everything here. I didn't really feel like I needed to.
And Minnesota's actually got a pretty good boxing scene as well.
Yeah. We had a great MMA scene too. Monty was doing great shows, and there was a couple other promoters doing good shows. And now it's just dead. Like there's literally nothing here, and it's sad because it used to be, because the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy was producing great fighters, and now there's nothing.
Monet, here you had Daryl Guntmiller, guy never made it to the UFC, fantastic record. You had was Joey Clark, another mid-level guy that 90% of our audience probably never heard of. I think he's 18-4. And then you got yourself, Sean Shirk, Dave Monet. There's a lot of talent coming out of Minnesota. There really is.
Yeah, it's sad that they.
Nick Thompson moved out there. Derek Noble moved out there. There's a lot there.
Was Kyle Jensen from there?
Who?
Kyle Jensen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, is it Kyle Jensen or is it Zach Jensen?
I think it's Kyle. Kyle's the one, the old school guy, though. Old
No. There's Zach. He was on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yep.
With the heavyweights.
He was a heavyweight. He was in Lesnar's camp.
Zach Jensen was?
A little bit,
Dude, that guy's got a crazy story. He was in, I'm going to say it. I don't care. If I run into the guy, it is what it is. He's in Puerto Vallarta doing bodyguard work.
Now?
Back in the day.
Oh, okay.
He's doing bodyguard work for a real wealthy guy. He went down to kind of look over his daughter, and she's there with her boyfriend. Zach is, I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of forecasting being the tough guy, big guy. And, you know, you got to remember, like, this girl and boyfriend are in their 20s, you know, early 20s. And Zach ends up beating him up in a bathroom, and the guy dies.
Really?
Yes, the guy dies. So he dies. Zach gets questions saying it's self-defense. The Mexican authorities never dealt with this. And, you know, there's in Puerto Vallarta in tourist ports, there's always a hands-off policy. I live there. So, like, I'm speaking from actual experience here. And I spent a couple days in a Mexican jail because I wouldn't pay my friggin' speeding ticket that they try to get you $100 out of. So, like, I'm real familiar with that system. They let him go for future questioning. Well, he jumps on a plane and they never put a hold on his ticket. And he's in the United States, and they just closed the case.
Really?
When he goes to the Ultimate Fighter, this happened just before he leaves there. Everyone's like, man, what the hell's wrong with this guy? And Sims, you know, that's my buddy, they're driving on him because he's just off and weird. And in his mind, he's leaving this house and probably going to get, you know, put on a federal, you know, plane and brought back to Puerto Vallarta in order to face the consequences. And Sims was telling me, like, at night, he'd just be crying his eyes out. Like, he'd be bawling his eyes out.
Wow, that's crazy.
And, yeah, the family, unfortunately, another Minnesota family, they never got justice for that.
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, I think a lot of that footage from The Ultimate Fighter, which you got to remember, we all watch it, somebody breaks every year and they kind of highlight it.
Yeah.
He broke that year and they completely just ignored it because a lot of that footage got sent to the legal teams, like whatever lawyers were involved. And Sims was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, we had this guy crying and he just broke. And he's just like, no, man, they cut as much of him out of that season as possible.
Travis, how come you never did The Ultimate Fighter? What, you know,
Were you ever asked?
Was the story?
Never got asked to.
Wow, that's
Did you try out?
No, I mean,
yeah, there comes a point where with your resume, you know, it's like doing a tryout in Miami, trying to get it. That's not cool anymore, you know.
Well, you know, that's I've really wanted to try this bare knuckle thing, you know, and they want me to do a tryout. And I keep telling them, like, I have 100 MMA fights. Do I really need to do a tryout? Like, what more do you need to see? So that bare knuckle thing's kind of interesting to me, but they want me to do a tryout, which I think.
Talk to Chris.
Yeah, I was gonna say something to him.
We'll get you the hookup. We'll get you the hookup.
Yeah, talk to Chris, dude. I mean, he's the color commentator.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Him and Sean Wheelock, like, they found each other. Like, Wheelock just, the way he uses words and so fast. He's so fast with it. And then he leaves, like, openings. And Chris just fills that hole. It's, man, dude, I love listening to those guys, you know, break down those bare knuckle fights.
Yeah, we've been trying to close for a little bit, but Travis, you know, you're not the first dude that brings up bare knuckles. That what interests you about that? You know, is it?
Honestly, for me, it's a toughness thing. See how tough I am. I think I'm a pretty tough guy. I think I could probably, you know, the 5 2-minute rounds is something that I think I could do pretty well with as far as, you know, conditioning and I heard they're paying pretty well, but honestly, it's maybe a little bit of an ego thing for me. I kind of want to leave this sport or whatever sport saying, you know,
you could say you did it. You could say you did it, you know? Yeah. I mean, just a life experience. It's really not about money at this point.
Yeah, you know, I consider myself a pretty tough guy, and that's about as tough as it gets. So
a lot of the dudes do that. That's what they describe as it brings back that edge from the old days.
Yeah. So when I'm done, I don't want to leave any stones unturned, and that's one that I want to turn still. So
that's super cool. All right, Miguel, dude, we got like We're 3 hours. We're 3 hours right now.
All
Hey,
right.
I want to thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun for me. So this is cool.
But
Thank you,
you know,
Travis.
Trav, we do this a lot. Like, you know, it's just as fun for us, and we clip it all out, and you know, we throw it online, and you know, you've liked a lot of our stuff and shared it. I think in the next 2.5 months, Miguel and I are going to try to knock out 40 interviews, and like you see how like we go super deep on them.
Sure.
So I try to watch as much as possible. Like my cornerman name. So we're going to try to do 40 interviews in 3 months.
Wow, that's awesome. It's cool. I mean, I enjoyed this. So.
Yeah, for sure. Trav, definitely good catching up. And like I said, bunch more questions. We'll keep in touch. And hey,
absolutely.
All good, man.
Thanks, Trav. Appreciate your time, buddy.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.